I will convene this meeting of the Board of County Commissioners. This is our regular Tuesday meeting, and today is in fact December 6th. Welcome everyone. Ms. Morkowski, how are you this morning?
I'm great, thank you.
Do we have any adjustments to the agenda?
No, we do not.
Then I will state that you see 4 county commissioners here on the dais, and our 5th county commissioner, Jay Bozovich, Commissioner Bozovich, is on the screen to our left, to my left, to your right. Welcome. You have a full board of county commissioners. To the board, do we have any adjustments to the agenda? I'm seeing none. Then emergency business, Mr. Morkowski.
No, we don't have any.
None today. Then we'll move to the board. I see no emergency business. So we'll move directly into public comments. We have 2 types of public comment we're going to listen to today. The in-person public comment from the folks who are here in Harris Hall. You'll be heard first. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. There'll be no warning when we're approaching the 3-minute mark. Keep an eye on the clock, the ticker that's on the wall right up there, and just be aware that right around the 3-minute mark, I'll ask you to summarize if you have not done so already. The second testimony we'll be receiving will be from people online. That'll be a queue that Ms. Jones will be managing. And for the people online, keep an eye on the clock that's on your screen or on your wrist, whatever it may be. There'll be no warning. And at 3 minutes for the folks who are testifying online, your mic will be silenced and we'll move along to the next speaker. So you have 3 minutes. When I call your name, please step up to the microphone, state your name for the record, and we'll begin the clock as soon as you have stated your name. So on today's in person, we have we'll start with Jennifer Hayward, followed by Pat Egan. So Ms. Hayward, if you would step forward to the mic, state your name for the record, and proceed with your 3-minute testimony. Thank you for being here this morning.
Thank you. I'm Jennifer Hayward, and I'm here to speak in support of the 30th Avenue Active Transportation Plan. I worked at Lane Community College for 23 years and have been advocating, along with numerous of my colleagues at LCC, for better bike and pedestrian paths along 30th Avenue for most of those 23 years. Safe bike and pedestrian paths along 30th Avenue provide numerous benefits to the community. The first one is that LCC students represent a lower income and more diverse population than Lane County in general, that average population in Lane County. And this new bike and pedestrian path will provide a new, safe, and low-cost way for people to get an education that will ultimately better their lives. 2, it provides an opportunity for better health and fitness for our community by providing a safe way for thousands of employees and students to bike and walk to work and school. 3, there have been numerous deaths and accidents involving pedestrians and bicyclists along 30th Avenue. This plan will obviously alleviate this serious public health issue. And finally, 4, it contributes to Lane County's and Lane Community College's urgent greenhouse gas reduction goals. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony, Ms. Hayward. Next up is Pat Egan, followed by Michael Donahue.
Good morning. My name is Pat Egan. I'm with Far West Steel Company here in Eugene, Oregon. And we're here today to support the initiative for Lane County to move forward with a material recovery facility designed by Bulk Handling Systems here in Eugene. I know you guys have spent a little bit of time learning about this, but we've been partners with Bulk Handling Systems for nearly 4 decades. And it's been a big part of our success at Far West. Our company started in 1956, and we've got a couple hundred employees in the county. And companies like Bulk Handling System have been a real help for us. And for us to watch their company over the years kind of grow from a small group here in Eugene to really a world-renowned technology company when it comes to MRFs has been exciting. And we've got the opportunity to, in our backyard, witness firsthand the success of what Bulk Handling has done. And we're pretty excited, obviously, for us as a metals supplier to Bulk Handling System. It's an opportunity for us. It supports the employees that we have in the area, and obviously gives us a chance to give to Bulk and watch them flourish. So we're excited and just want to make sure that from our small perspective, you guys understand what importance it brings to Far West into the community. One last thing I'll say is it's for us, we send the steel they build these really interesting pieces of equipment and they end up all over the world. We don't get a chance to see them. So this would be a great chance for us, for our employees, and for the rest of the community really to see what bulk handling produces. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Egan. Next is Michael Donahue, who will be followed by Dave Backey.
Good morning. Thank you for having us here. I signed the sheet as I thought it was a check-in. So Pat is my boss. I work at Far West Steel also, but I'll just emphasize a couple of things since I have the opportunity in 3 minutes. Everything that Pat said is exactly true. Far West is a great organization, as is bulk handling, a lot of family wage jobs, and that's really the benefit. Not just for Lane County, where we have an environmental impact, which we all want, but the jobs that would come as a result of that are skilled. And so engineers, welders, laser cutters, CDL drivers, they're family wage jobs. And it would be an immense benefit, not just for the 210 employees that we have at Far West. We would probably add a dozen or so more, and there's a multiplier effect that we get our supplies from other people in the Lane County area, and it would help support them as well. So just a big component. Bulk has brought a lot of jobs to the area, and as Pat said, exports those jobs or those products out across the world. This would be a showpiece for us and a sense of pride for our employees. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Donahue. A quick aside, everything my boss says is always right, too.
You notice that?
By the way, you're my boss. Next is Dave Backey, who will be followed by Rob Zako. Good morning, Dave.
Good morning, and thanks for having me. Dave Backey, President CEO of Chambers Construction. I moved here in 1972. So I've been in Eugene for 50 years, and I've seen when I moved here, I remember the dump was on next to Beltline Highway and next to Lane Plywood. And fast forward 50 years, and we have this huge mountain of debris that is growing and growing and growing. And we're really proud to have been chosen to team up with bulk handling to propose on this new MRF center. And Chambers Construction being, we've been around since 1955, and we've built probably more landmark projects in Lane County than any other contractor locally has. And I will beat the drum of local contractors over and over and over, and what we bring to the county as far as support of our employees and support of local contractors to build these facilities, not just for Lane County, but all owners. So what Chambers will bring to the table is jobs for this project, tying in with the community benefits building program that Lane County is pursuing, and building a facility that bulk handling Lane County can be proud of. And from a personal point of view, I would have to say it is extremely necessary as we're in a society of consumerism and packaging and stuff that gets thrown away way too much. So the recycling, the bulk handling, the equipment that they build and put in these facilities is quite amazing. And I just don't know how we can go another way and continue on and keep Oregon green if we don't do something like this. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Backey. I moved here in 73, so you've been here longer than I have. But I've worked under a lot of roofs out at Jerry's that you provided through the years as we grew. Thank you. Next is Rob Zako, followed by Samantha Roberts.
Good morning, Chair, Fire, members of the County Commission Board. I'm Rob Zako, Executive Director of Better Eugene Springfield Transportation. I want to second what Ms. Hayward said about the 30th Avenue Transportation Plan. She said it better than I could, so I won't repeat her remarks, but urge you to adopt that later today. I do want to call attention to a growing problem that Best has seen. We maintain what we call a fatality tracker. We get news reports and we get information on some of the fatalities that occurring on roadways. Lane County issued a media release just after the Thanksgiving Day weekend. There was, I think, 3 or 4 fatalities there. We're seeing people killing themselves and each other. Some of them are walking, some of them are biking, but most of these people are driving cars. We see people are distracted and they just leave the lane and they just crash into an oncoming traffic. They crash in a tree. We see road rage. We see driving under the influence. We see suicide by motor vehicle. We don't have exact figures, but what we're seeing broadly is a rising number of traffic fatalities in Lane County, in Oregon, across America. Not worldwide, but across America. This is a uniquely American problem. The New York Times called this out. We have basically an epidemic of roadway fatalities here in America. The causes are complex. People are depressed. They're using alcohol. They don't have housing. It's not really clear what to do. I'm not coming to you with solutions. What I'm coming to you is saying we collectively have a problem. It's a personal problem. It's an economic problem. USDOT says that the statistical value of a loss of life is $11.8 million. You multiply that by 50 deaths or so in Lane County per year, that's $500 million of lost economic activity. This is a public health problem. This is an epidemic. It has complex causes. Your public works people, Eugene's public works people, Springfield's public works people can do some things to protect people, but ultimately this is a public health problem. And I'm coming to you as a public health agency here in Lane County to say that we need to work together. Public agencies, nonprofits like BEST, the private sector, to solve what's a complex and growing problem. Again, I don't have solutions here. The Eugene Vision Zero Action Advisory Committee met last week, and we're all heartbroken. We're heartbroken because we're seeing too much loss of life. We want to do something. We want to work together. We offer our support for whatever makes sense, working with you and others. We understand that your fatal crash investigation team is going to come to you next week with a more detailed report. I'm speaking today because I'll be traveling, but we're concerned and we want to help. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Zako.
This is an article from the New York Times that appeared recently.
And I'll take care of that. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Next in Harris Hall is Samantha Roberts, and Samantha's the last person signed up in Harris Hall.
Don't mind me. Thank you, Chair Farr and Board, for your time listening to public comment this morning. My name is Samantha Roberts, and I'm here today representing the Eugene Area Chamber of Commerce. We represent over 1,100 businesses in the Eugene Springfield area here in Lane County, which represents tens of thousands of jobs. We're here today to provide our strong support for the Integrated Material and Energy Recovery Center at Short Mountain and the contract that is in front of you today. This facility represents unique opportunities, prevailing wage jobs, future innovation, and emissions reduction potential, unlike most other projects in our region. This project is one of a kind. It has the potential to put Lane County on some pretty important maps and open doors for future opportunities that we haven't even wrapped our heads around yet. The economic development opportunities related to this kind of innovation is immeasurable. And with it being led by local companies, Bulk Handling Systems, Far West Steel, and Chambers Construction, it makes this project truly a once-in-a-generation opportunity. As our community looks to make very difficult decisions to address climate change in meaningful ways, this kind of seems like a slam dunk. I know that there are impacts and we need to take those seriously, but this is a really exciting opportunity. I have 1 minute and 42 seconds left, so I'm just going to take an off-script opportunity to say I have been thinking about climate action planning for several years now and at the policy level. This particular digester was one that we would discuss over beers and get really excited about because of the potential that it has in our community. The fact that there is an opportunity to support local companies, local jobs, real families here in Lane County that need these jobs, and hundreds of thousands of metric tons of CO2 removed from the digester itself, from vehicles off the road, from this single stream opportunity. It makes me really excited personally. This is not necessarily on behalf of the chamber. I'm just very excited to see this under consideration. So thank you for your work on this. Back to representing the chamber, we ask you to support this contract that's in front of you today for the very exciting work moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Robertson. Thank you for your work as my designated appointee to the Climate Action Committee. Ms. Jones, that concludes the Harris Hall testimony. Subsequent to the online testimony, I'll ask again if anyone in Harris Hall wishes to provide testimony. Ms. Jones, do we have a queue online?
Thank you, Chair Farr. We do have a queue online. So at this time, if you have registered for online public comment and would like to speak during the meeting, please raise your virtual hand. Please only raise it once because it is a toggle. So if you raise it again, your hand will go down. I will call upon you in the order that your hands were raised, and we will start with Sarah Mazzi. Sarah, I will unmute your microphone and you may begin your testimony. Sarah, I show you, there you go.
Hello, my name is Sarah Mazzi. I'm the Safe Routes to School coordinator, a local Safe Routes to School coordinator. And I am speaking today in support of improved bike and pedestrian facilities on 30th. And I'd also like to add that prior to this work, I was employed by Friends of Buford Park in Mount Pisgah. And at that time, improving access to this jewel of our community, Buford Park, was a goal for that organization as well. But I'm not speaking on, I can't speak on their behalf at this point. I want to echo the comments made by Jennifer Hayward and Rob Zako in support of improving bike and pedestrian facilities on 30th and generally improving safety on our roads. From the perspective of Safe Routes to School coordinator, there are students in South Eugene that need to either cross 30th or use 30th to get to school, whether it's getting to a transit stop for high school students or getting to elementary or middle school. And we do have in that area some of the best bike and pedestrian facilities in the Eugene 4J district. And so there are quite a few students who are getting to school walking and biking. And 30th is one of those trouble spots that can make a trip impossible or very dangerous. I also just want to say that we not only have people dying on our roadways tragically, but we also have so many mental and physical health problems that are caused by or are exacerbated by the level of physical inactivity that so many people struggle with. And creating better bike and pedestrian facilities can allow people to incorporate physical activity and time outside into their day in a way that research has shown can improve physical health and can improve mental health. And for our students right now, mental health is a massive, massive problem. And so I think this is one of those problems like climate change, which of course this also helps, that there's no silver bullet, but making better bike and pedestrian facilities and getting more people, giving access to more people to use active transportation as a means of mobility and recreation is key. So thank you so much for considering this proposal to improve bike and pedestrian facilities on 30th.
Thank you, Ms. Mazzi.
Thank you for your public comment. Our next speaker will be Micah McGomber, followed by Claire Ross. Micah, I will unmute your microphone and you may begin your public testimony.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thanks for taking my time, commissioners. I wanted to speak about the F2 template dwelling staff memo that's coming. I think it's on the agenda today. Also, Bill Close, on behalf of the Home Builders Association, has submitted a letter as well. I hope you guys take the time to read that, talking about the major and peripheral big game range. The F2 template dwelling applications have been very strict for the last 30 years. And now the interpretation at the county planners are effectively shutting down any new homes on F2 properties. I'm sure you guys are aware of this, but this new memo that came out, the Lane County Planners staff memo, I think has some major flaws. Bill Close's letter talks a lot about the ambiguity of Policy 11 and the question of whether Policy 11 is intended to be an independent standard review for dwellings on rural land. And the zoning code for the forest land has its discrete list of standards that are to be applied, and it does not list Policy 11. I think the Lane County Board is the best interpreter of the ambiguity of the plan and code language. So I hope you guys take the time to have some input on that. And LUBA itself agrees that Policy 11 is ambiguous. Also, one other note is the siting standards that require clustering. Currently, for the last 30 years, F2 template dwelling applications require clustering of homes for soil types and for roads. And there's a couple standards that includes specific rules that it must have clustering of homes on F2 properties. And the way the big game management interpretation is applying it is exactly the opposite, where it's 80-acre minimum. So applying both of these rules at the same time is contradicting itself. So I hope that the county, I hope that you commissioners can weigh in on this and straighten it out. Appreciate your time. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Mr. Macomba.
Thank you for your public comment. Our next speaker will be Claire Roth, followed by Emily Little. Claire, I will unmute your microphone and you may begin your public testimony.
Good morning, Lane County Board of Commissioners and everyone in the room. My name is Claire Roth and I work with Better Eugene Springfield Transportation, also known as BEST. I'm joining Jennifer, Rob, and Sarah in sharing my support for the 30th Avenue Active Transportation Plan. The plan's focused on reducing crash severity for all roadway users is an important one, especially with the rising epidemic of severe or deadly crashes, especially on those least protected, aka those outside of motor vehicles. Planning and carrying out safety improvements will help alleviate this. I look forward to the approval of this design concept and further refining of the design to protect the lives of our community. Thank you so much for your time and for your work on this project. It's really important. I'm sure it can't be easy, but it is life-saving work. Thank you again.
Thank you, Ms. Roth.
Thank you for your public comment. Our next speaker will be Emily Little, followed by Jarrell Brown. Emily, I will unmute your microphone and you may begin your public testimony.
Good morning, all. My name is Emily Little, and I'm speaking to urge the commissioners to adopt the Climate Resilient Plan next week. I am a perinatal health researcher, a climate equity and resilience task force member, and the executive director of Nurturely, a Lane County nonprofit tackling the root cause of inequities in pregnancy, postpartum, and infant health. One of the most pervasive and urgent of these root causes is climate change. It is well known that the climate crisis is an impending threat to human health. The impacts of the climate crisis are felt first and felt hardest by pregnant and postpartum parents and their babies. We know that risk of preterm birth and even stillbirth increases as temperatures and pollution increase. Because of the simultaneous crises of systemic and environmental racism, Black and Brown pregnant people are at highest risk of these climate-related exposures. The pregnancy, postpartum, and infancy periods are known as critical periods for brain development, immune system formation, and disease mitigation because the exposures during this period may not be able to be reversed or replaced. Adopting a climate resilience plan is a necessary first step in the right direction to tackle an urgent issue affecting parents and babies, and therefore the overall health of the public in Lane County. The climate resilience plan will pave the way to begin protecting our community from the effects of wildfires, smoke, heat, and storms, which must be prioritized alongside climate mitigation and action plans, alongside any pandemic preparedness plans, and alongside any equity initiatives. Supporting climate resilience is aligned with the Commissioner's strategic priorities of a safe, healthy county and is integral to advancing public health and racial equity in Lane County. On behalf of the pregnant people and healthcare providers that Nurturely serves, we urge the Commissioners to adopt the Climate Resilience Plan and begin working aggressively to protect our community. The impending threat of climate change seems insurmountable, but by adopting the Climate Resilience Plan, and in particular focusing mitigation and resilience efforts on pregnant and postpartum people from Black and Brown communities, we can collectively protect the health of our community for years and even generations to come. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Little.
Thank you for your public comments. Our next speaker is Jarrell Brown, followed by Josh Fatal. Jarrell, I will unmute your microphone and you may begin your public comment.
Excellent.
Jarrell.
Thank you all so much. Oh, pardon me. Dear County Commissioners, I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to present testimony today. My name is Jarrell Brown, and I am the Environmental Climate Justice Organizer for our local chapter of the NAACP. Thank you for the work you have done previously on Lane County, on the Lane County Climate Action Plan. It is very appreciated by us and our community members. Climate change has become a threat that our local communities cannot ignore. Over the past several months, I have conversed with several Lane County residents who feel that now is the time for us to act. Phase 3 of the larger Climate Action Plan is essential because it brings equity and resilience up front and center to the conversation. In climate equity and resilience planning, we recognize that impacted communities will bear the brunt of the impacts of climate change and who have been historically excluded from the decision-making process. It is critical that we bring Black, Native American, Indigenous, people of color, low-income, rural, and other vulnerable populations into these conversations to better serve the needs of all residents. As the threat of climate change becomes more severe, strategies must be implemented to avoid the most catastrophic consequences of climate change. This plan provides an opportunity for Lane County to take action and provide support to all residents of this county. Now more than ever, Lane County will have access to funding from the state and federal governments. Lane County should act to bring federal funding dollars to our local government to implement these strategies, which will effectively reduce the risks and harms of climate change. Resiliency is about people and helping them thrive and stay healthy in the face of climate threats. The Lane County Community Climate Resilience Plan, oh, that was a mouthful, must strive to strengthen the ability of all people to prepare and plan for, absorb, recover from, and more successfully adapt to the inevitable climate adverse events our communities now face. The county's adopted solutions have to be community-focused and rooted in local needs. Equal partnership with communities are critical to making sure that community concerns and issues are addressed, and to ensure that buy-in of the community to increase the likelihood of success of implementing those plans. Overall, I support this plan and ask that you vote to adopt the Lane County Community Climate Resilience Plan. As a community, we are given the chance to advance policy and climate change, on climate change, ooh, that would have been bad, to create a more resilient future for all Lane County residents. Thank you again for your time and your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Thank you for your public comment. Our last speaker is Josh Fatal. Josh, I will unmute your microphone and you may begin your public comment.
Hi, my name is Josh Fatal, and I live in the forest outside of Cottage Grove, and I'm the executive director of the Center for Rural Livelihoods. And I'm commenting on the Lane Climate Resiliency Plan and about what Lane County could and must do amidst climate chaos, economic decline, and an inevitably growing population. We see in the forest increasing tree mortality, drying up of waterways, and like all of us, I can feel the smoke. We can see the news about climate change around the world. And then in order to deal with climate change, first thing, we have to admit the reality, the science, and the history that this stems from US colonialism, the settler colonialism, and the genocide of indigenous people, the extractivist capitalism that takes the forest away and moves the wealth of the top 1%, and of course to the federal subsidies that enable all this to happen. Lane County, maybe a small entity, amidst this dynamic of a national housing market, an international lumber market, and federal subsidies, but there are solutions in front of us. And one key solution that I want to point out and take a moment on, staring us in the face here in Lane County, which is that we need to reduce fuel loads in the forest while encouraging older, stable trees. And we need to ban clear cuts while continuing to harvest trees, to keep a continuous canopy of trees while harvesting the smaller, younger ones. And for that, we need a market and a plan for small diameter timber. Thinning of small diameter timber while keeping older trees and continuous canopy will prepare land for introducing controlled burns. It will make land more fire resilient. It will increase biodiversity if done right. It will require skilled forest jobs. This is the work we have done for 4 decades at the Center for Rural Livelihoods. And we have used the timber from the ecological management projects to build multiple houses on our campus as a forest research center, and for houses that Square One Villages builds. And we need to build affordable houses, forest to affordable frame, with the byproducts of ecological restoration. And we need people living in the forest with the eco-village zoning exception, as long as that land is tended ecologically. They need to live and tend the forest. The county must create zoning that allows eco-village living in the forest while avoiding a developer free-for-all, while demanding strict ecological standards for forest dwelling. The county can support and create community land trusts in the forest with limited equity housing, like Square One Village is doing some of that, and with local timber products, with local workers. As FDR did in 1935, we could set up a resettlement administration and think about redistributing land. At minimum, the county must have a lumber procurement policy to create this forest to affordable frame project, and the county must, at minimum, adopt the climate resiliency plan. Thank you.
Thank you for your, sorry, Chair Farr.
Please continue.
Thank you for your public comment. And Chair Farr, at this time, that was our last speaker, so I will return the meeting to you.
Thank you, Ms. Jones, for handling the online queue, and I'll open it up to anyone else in Harris Hall who wishes to provide testimony to the Board of Commissioners. I see none. Then we'll move down the agenda and invite remonstrances and other items from the Board of County Commissioners. Do I have a queue? Commissioner Buck.
Thank you, Chair. Trying to get us going here. I appreciate everybody that has testified. This was a lot more than last week, and I appreciate you all individually coming in to speak to us. It's great to actually see you one-on-one, and it's also an opportunity for those that can't come in to speak to us in a hybrid manner. And one day, hopefully, we shall meet as well. I appreciate all the folks that came in to support the 30th Avenue project that we'll be talking about here shortly. It clearly has my support. There's a lot of work that's been put into it, a lot of community input as well. And I appreciate you coming forth and giving your statement in support as well. I also appreciate those that came in to talk about the Murph Center that we are very excited about moving forward. It also has my big support behind it. It is really wonderful to see the smaller businesses and some larger businesses come in support of it as well, knowing that it does affect you, your work, your employees, and means something significant to you too, beyond the recyclable impacts that it will further generate. I look forward to the new source supply of product that it could bring to the community, that other small businesses could imagine what they could use from those projects and products to further enhance our green economy locally. So thank you as well for coming in. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Book. Vice Chair Trieger.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. As I begin to close out the second year of my first term, I just have to say how much more fun my second year has been because we get to be here in Harris Hall. My whole first year, everything was remote. Didn't get to see people's faces, didn't get to hear people in person. So thank you, everyone who was able to make the time to come out and speak in person, and appreciation to everyone who spoke online as well. Your testimony is just as impactful and important to us. So thank you. 3 topics this morning, all of which I am in support of and really appreciate folks amplifying the reasons that we're supporting these issues, adopting our resiliency phase of our climate action plan, the 30th Avenue plan, and the construction of the MRF. What strikes me across all 3 of these is they're all 3 really great examples of the interconnectivity of the work, how all of these initiatives will impact positively the economy in our community, will impact positively health outcomes for people in our community, will impact positively the operations of Lane County and make us a more efficient and responsive government entity, and many more reasons. But it's so important to remind folks we don't all have to take sides and come at things combatively. There's something that we can find in every one of these initiatives that lifts up all the different sectors that are impacted, and most importantly, the people living in Lane County, our constituents. And I just want to say, for those of you who know Buckminster Fuller, one of the great original sort of innovators and thinkers and architect, and really one of the 4 leaders of the sustainability movement, in thinking about the opportunity that we have to create this facility to do better with our waste management stream. When people used to talk about throwing things away, and Buckminster Fuller would say, there is no away. And I think this facility is a really exciting way for us to embrace and recognize the reality of that and its impacts, and do at least a little bit better with what we're throwing away. And I appreciated particularly the comments about the consumerism and the packaging and the society. That's where we are. And so this is a great way to address that. I think we're all really excited to get to that item on our agenda later this morning. So again, thank you everyone for taking time, and stay safe, stay healthy, and Happy New Year. Thanks.
Thank you, Vice Chair Trieger. And Commissioner Brunet, I suspected you may have something to say.
You're fortunate. My cold won't let me say all I would want to say. First, hey, Commissioner Trieger, I knew Bucky Fuller, believe it or not. He was an interesting fellow. First, I would like to say that Far West Steel and Chambers Construction and Bulk Handling were here before any of us were at these podiums, and will be here long after, and I think represent some of the anchors of our local economy. To see existing businesses organized in ways that address the largest county carbon emitter, which is Short Mountain, to see existing business infrastructure look at properly structured public-private partnerships, which this absolutely is, and we will get into that later. I was going to say later in the show. Sorry, later in the program. Is I think one of the most hopeful signs that we could possibly imagine as we move forward. It puts meat on the skeleton of climate mitigation, carbon emission mitigation, in a way where it's also a job creator and good for business. This is the type of business that I retired from. I maintain my equity interest in the business. I just retired from it, that I retired from before I started becoming a county commissioner. So I just want to say a few things. One, Dave Bakke from Chambers Construction. We kid each other a lot. We've known each other 25 or 30 years, but I want you to know that you have my utmost respect. I think that you and your company embody what I and we created in a community benefits framework to try and prioritize local contractors, local jobs, local hires, good pay, decent insurance for our employees, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm proud to take this opportunity to say that, Dave. Mr. Egan, we don't know each other, but I did remember the name of the young man that I mentored in the mid-90s for 2 years who could have gone either way. I don't believe he's any longer with your group, but Ray Colasar was that name. And I don't know if you guys remember him or even know him, but yeah. He is, you know, when I was, I've never campaigned for anything until I campaigned for this job. And I was knocking on doors and I hadn't seen him. And I knocked on a door and it was his wife who answered. And she said, "Oh, you're Joe Berney." She cried and gave me a hug and introduced me to the family. I'm like, hey, I gotta move on. But yes, he was someone who I gave 2 years of my life to. And hopefully it kind of steered him in a way where his work ethic benefited your company. And Steve Miller, you know that you epitomize organizing a business around the public good and around the social good, and in this instance, climate. When I came onto this board, there was actually a disagreement amongst a couple of commissioners about whether or not climate change was real. That was 4 years ago. And my point at that time was I don't want to get into argument about whether climate change is real or whether the earth is flat or round. I want to know what the carbon emission footprint is of the operation of Lane County government and how we can decrease it, which is partially what led to a climate initiative. So the fact that you are here proposing what you're proposing, the county staff have been working with you, and we are finally birthing this thing, is a joy to me. And I can't thank you all enough for the work you do in our community and for bringing this opportunity to Lane County. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Berney. Commissioner Bozovich.
No remonstrance today. Talking makes me cough.
Thank you, and that'll be around with you for a while.
Yeah, we can both speak to that.
Thank you. You know, a couple of things I'm going to say. Mr. Backey, thank you for being here today. I literally lived under the roofs you built. The decades I worked at Jerry's, I can't count the number of roofs you built that I actually spent more time there than I spent with my family during those decades. Thank you for all of the work that you've done in my neck of the woods, Bethel. And Far West Steel, also, you live in my neck of the woods, Bethel. You know, the work that you've done, and you know, Commissioner Berney's talking about people who work with Far West Steel historically. Mike Solomon is somebody whose name you recognize. I'm sure I stay in touch with Mike, former neighbor of mine, and his wife followed me on the Eugene City Council many years ago, and I've subsequently followed her on the Eugene City Council shortly after that. So thank you for that. But that being said, I think you know, what you both pointed out today is the enormous impact of bulk handling systems on our local economy, not just on the world, as you mentioned, their product is shipped all over the world, but our local economy, jobs created by Chambers Construction, by Far West Steel, in order to provide the materials for the components and the facilities to build the components in. That's something that I hadn't really thought a great deal about, the tremendous impact on the local economy. And the fact, Mr. Backey, that your employees will be able to see the components on the job. Excuse me, Mr. Egan, it was you that said the components on the job that you provide the materials for. A chance to see basically a flagship facility right here in our own county. Looking forward to that. The other thing I'm going to mention is that I told Dave Backey that I moved here in '73, or I implied that. I did. I moved here in '73. And Mr. Mokrzycki, one thing I noticed whenever I drove down, I was going to the University of Oregon, would go home to Tillamook on weekends, drive through Harrisburg and cross the county line right at the giant slide. Anybody remember the giant slide? Right at the county line on Highway 99. Always within a mile or so, I'd see a sheriff's patrol, usually with 2 deputies in that sheriff's car. And it always gave me a sense of safety when I drove into Lane County. It also made me look at my speedometer when I drove into Lane County, because I always saw the sheriff's patrol. Today, we don't have sheriff's patrol. If we worry about fatal car crashes, one of the things that is missing, a key component, is the enforcement of speed laws and traffic violations. We don't have that from our sheriff's patrol. And my question is this, rhetorical, I know the answer. Why can't we afford sheriff's patrols anymore? How did we used to pay for sheriff's patrols, but today we don't pay for that? Well, it came from the general fund. We all know what happened to the general fund over the course of the last 20 years. The nosedive that it's taken is very well documented why it took a nosedive. It's very well documented how we've tried to recover from it. But the net result is today, as we sit here, there are two, maybe two sheriff's cars current in Lane County that goes all the way from a Cedar Head Lighthouse to Waldo Lake. That's not a good situation, Mr. Mulcahy. You're not hearing that for the first time. You're not hearing that for the last time. So that being said, Dr. Zako and others who testified regarding the 30th Avenue plan and bicycle and pedestrian safety, I'm in favor of it, absolutely. I'm also in favor of improved transportation plans in Bethel, which we tend to run behind. I don't know why Bethel runs behind the rest of the city, but we do. So that being said, thank you for your testimony this morning. I have no further remonstrances. Anything else from the board? Very well. Thank you for being here this morning. Let's move down to our consent calendar. Today, the Board of County Commissioners will be considering a consent calendar, which we've looked at. If you're in the audience watching online, click on View Items or View Material on each of the consent calendar items. You'll see all of the material that the Board of Commissioners has considered prior to placing this on the consent calendar with a single vote. Do I have a motion? Vice Chair Trieger.
Chair, I move approval of the consent calendar for Tuesday, December 6, 2022.
Second.
Moved by Vice Chair Trieger and seconded by Commissioner Burney. Discussion to the motion. I am seeing none. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously. Thank you very much for being here in Harris, all those of you who are present, and feel free to leave anytime. It's not, but feel free to also stay because we have, as Commissioner Burney alluded to, we have a really big show today. Next is we'll be considering Order 2216-06-04 in the matter of setting a public hearing for the surrender of 5 county roads or portions thereof to the city of Cottage Grove. And with us today, Mr. Mulcahy, I'll ask you to introduce your panel, which will include Jay Blame.
Oh, Jay's online.
There we go.
I'm online.
To my left.
Go ahead, Jay.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm here this morning to request a public hearing date be scheduled for January 24th, 2023 at 1:30 p.m. time certain for the board to consider public testimony regarding surrendering jurisdiction of portions of 5 county roads to the city of Cottage Grove. Cottage Grove recently passed resolution number 2082 on November 14th. Requesting Lane County transfer jurisdiction of these roads to the city. Oregon Revised Statutes requires a public hearing and public notification for all road surrenders. The date that we have selected for the public hearing will allow adequate time for public notification, which will provide information regarding the time, date, and how to attend a public meeting. The Public Works Director has provided a preliminary director's report attached as Exhibit B to the order, which recommends the board consider this matter and agrees that the time and date selected is appropriate for the public hearing. In summary, I ask the board to approve setting a public hearing date of January 24th, 2023 at 1:30 p.m. time certain to consider this matter. A staff report on the jurisdictional transfer of these roads will be presented at that time. That's all I have. I'm available for any questions or further discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Blame. Then I'll look to the board for any discussion regarding this particular item. Seeing none. Am I seeing any? No, I'm seeing none. I love it when I see what I actually see. Then I'll ask for a motion. Vice Chair. That's what I'm seeing. Request for a motion.
Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Buck, thank you.
I'll move approval of Order 22-12-06-04 in the matter of setting a public hearing for the surrender of 5 county roads or portions thereof to the city of Cottage Grove for a hearing on January 24th, 2023 at 1:30 p.m. time certain.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Buck and seconded by Commissioner Burney. We have Order 22-12-06-04. Discussion to the motion. I am seeing none. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Blame.
Thank
Have a good
you.
rest of the day.
You too.
Then we'll move on to item 6B, which is order 22-120605 in the matter of approving the East 30th Avenue design concept and authorizing staff to prepare orders of necessity for right-of-way. And Mr. Mokraski, I'll ask you to introduce your panel, but I'll give a heads up. It will be Becky Taylor who's moving forward. And I love catching people doing things right. And I am with Ms. Taylor, Mr. Mokraski, I often am able to catch Ms. Taylor doing things right, including 4 years ago when Ms. Taylor was named the outstanding public employee for Lane County. Welcome, Mr. Mokraski.
Well, gosh, I couldn't do a better introduction than that. So go ahead, Becky, take it away.
Thank you. Sure. Chair Farr and Commissioners. Let's see, I'm needing to find my PowerPoint. Thank you to Diana Jones for preloading this for me. Is this showing yet? No.
While you're waiting, that thanks should go to Tanya Ellis. She preloaded it.
So I'm not seeing how to project this.
I think I hear Ms. Ellis approaching.
Becky, would you like me to find the presentation and run it for you?
I would love that, Diana. Thank you.
Okay, if you want to, give me 1 second to bring it up, and then we can get going. If you want to begin talking before I get it up.
All right. Thank you for your patience. So for this item, the board is being asked to approve a design concept that will improve safety on 30th Avenue. Funding for this effort was provided by the Central Lane Metropolitan Planning Organization, and that enabled us to contract with Tool Design and Cogito to develop some design alternatives and share those with the community to get input on preferences. And the board's approval of this design concept by board order is required by Lane Manual Chapter 15. The project focus is on the portion of East 30th Avenue that's under Lane County's jurisdiction. That's between Spring Boulevard and Eldon Schaefer Drive. The portion to the west of Spring Boulevard is under the City of Eugene's jurisdiction. And so we met several times throughout the process with staff from the City of Eugene to make sure that our plans provided a physical connection to their facilities. The sidewalk and bike lanes end at Agate Street. And then the facilities on the east end of the corridor at McVeigh are under the jurisdiction of Oregon Department of Transportation. We also met with them, talked about some interim strategies for improving safety, such as warning lights on the narrow bridge of 30th crosses over I-5. We met with Lane Transit District to talk about how to improve pedestrian safety at their existing bus stops along East 30th Avenue. And then we met with Lane Community College throughout the process. This is the primary access to their facility. It is a mixed jurisdiction area. This portion of East 30th Avenue is outside of the Eugene or Springfield urban growth boundary. But the area is being considered for inclusion in Eugene's urban reserve. So there is a potential that in the future 30th Avenue could be included in Eugene's urban growth boundary. So the project team really narrowed the focus of this project on safety, not making major changes to the number of vehicle travel lanes until we really knew what the development impacts were and what the transportation needs were, whether there was more center lanes needed for turning and so on and so forth. So Diana, I'm going to have you proceed to slide 5, actually slide 4. So that's the area for under consideration for inclusion in urban reserve. And again, it shows all of East 30th Avenue. So we are limiting recommendations for major changes on 30th until we know what those impacts are. Next slide, please. As you heard today, there's been extensive public involvement in this process, and there's over 100 pages of public comment in your agenda packet on this item. Toward the beginning of the process, there was more opposition, and that was specifically related to an earlier design alternative that called for reduction in the number of vehicle travel lanes. And there were concerns about safety with the potential for increased head-on collisions with people being more inclined to pass slower moving vehicles climbing up the hill. So again, the proposal before you today eliminates that controversial element. It doesn't include lane reductions. And the overwhelming majority of public comments are in support of the design recommendation before the board today. Next slide, please, Diana. So the safety problem that we're focused on addressing with this design recommendation, there have been more people who have died or have been seriously injured while walking or biking on East 30th than any other road under Lane County's jurisdiction countywide. I was really surprised to learn that, so it definitely needs our attention. And to improve safety for people walking and biking along this, higher vehicle volume and speed facility, we really needed to have a more substantial protected space, and that's what this design recommendation is for. We also noted a higher crash density at 3 intersections that are under Lane County's jurisdiction. Those include Forest Boulevard, Bloomberg, and Eldon Schaefer. So we are proposing treatments at those 3 locations to reduce crash severity and frequency. Next slide, please. So the key elements of the design that would reduce crash severity is creating a wider shoulder on the south side of the road for a shared use path for people walking and biking, and that would be protected from vehicle traffic with a jersey barrier or a concrete barrier. And to avoid widening the road just to reduce costs and environmental impacts, we're creating that space by borrowing space from the north side of the road. We're reducing the shoulder width to 3 feet. And then in places where we're needing to reduce the center median, we are protecting the center median where we need some turn pockets at some intersections. And we have committed to look more closely at where the center median is narrow if we need to introduce more protective measures such as additional barricades as part of a subsequent design refinement process. Next slide, please. And we are proposing a roundabout at Eldon Schaefer. This is currently a signalized T intersection. It's had the most crashes along the corridor. And a roundabout really reduces crash severity because the vehicle's speeds are significantly lower to maneuver through a roundabout, about 15 miles an hour. Whereas you can imagine people making left-hand turns into the campus, they're much more vulnerable if someone is attempting to speed through the red light at 55 miles an hour. So that really reduces crash severity. Also, all of the traffic is moving in the same direction, so that it reduces the number of conflict points. We worked to create a design in which people walking and biking did not need to maneuver through the roundabout because we want to reduce conflict points there. And we are, as part of a subsequent design process, committed to looking more carefully at how to further protect people walking and biking through the roundabout, whether it's adding pedestrian activated beacons to alert motor vehicles that they need to yield to people walking and biking. Also, roundabouts provide for more fluid traffic movement. It's a much shorter delay than waiting at a red light. And this area actually has one of the few vehicle congestion problems identified in the 2017 Transportation System Plan. There's an operational failure at McVeigh and 30th intersection. And oftentimes the vehicle queue lengths for people trying to make left-hand turns into the campus back up into McVeigh. And so the roundabout reduces that delay, which reduces idling, which reduces vehicle emissions. Next slide, please. So I've talked about this being a safety project. It is also an equity project. We are really focused on providing better transportation options for people who don't have access to or aren't able to drive a motor vehicle, and walking and biking is a less expensive, sustainable form of transportation. We want to make that safer, especially knowing that so many people have died trying to walk or bike on this facility. We recognize that the steep hill of 30th Avenue does not make 30th an all ages and abilities facility at this time or with implementation of this proposal. However, further expansion of e-bikes will help overcome that elevation challenge. But this is a step in the right direction, is to at least protect people. So if they need or choose to walk and bike, so that they don't have a fatal or serious outcome by being struck by a fast moving vehicle right next to them. Next slide, please. And this is my last slide. So the next steps, we've committed to, we've identified a list of things that aren't perfect with the design that we want to perfect. And so we need to evaluate more details, such as where to have pedestrian activated or vehicle camera activated systems that warn people driving that they're potentially intersecting an area where people are walking or biking on the path. And those are specifically at the on and off ramps at Spring Boulevard and Gagne. And we did hear people who are in favor of this design concerned about that. And people in favor are also concerned about pedestrian safety, sharing that space with fast moving bikes, especially downhill. And so we really need to look at that. We also heard the potential for blocking wildlife passage by introducing those concrete barriers. And so we want to look at that more closely too. So we don't have construction funding identified, but grant funding would be the target. But before then, we've committed to really looking at the list of concerns that we've heard from the public that we share, that we want to look at more closely and see how to really perfect this design. That process would also enable us to really determine what any additional right-of-way or easement needs would be. Although we think most of the project can fit within the existing right-of-way, we might need more areas for like ADA ramps, especially at the roundabout. And so the board order before you today also requests authorizing staff to prepare a right-of-way plan so that we know what those impacts will be. And also wanted to point out that the Transportation Advisory Committee, they held a public hearing on this. They heard from 9 people in favor, they heard no opposition, and they recommended that the board approve the design concept before you today. And that completes my presentation unless you have any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor. I'll turn it over to the queue from the board for questions. And to kick it off, I see no queue initially. I have 3 favorite roundabouts. You know, as we talk, roundabouts is something that people have to get used to. You have to get accustomed to driving on them. Once you do, boy, the flow that occurs with roundabouts is just amazing. My 3 favorite, third, is at the end of Barger Drive at Green Hill Road. Used to be a terrible stop sign there. If you were trying to get off of Barger Drive to turn left onto Green Hill Road, bring a chess set because you might as well play a game. But that roundabout really improves the flow of some large trucks, trailers, etc. I love that. That's my 3rd favorite. My 2nd favorite is in Springfield, the double roundabout at Franklin Boulevard and Highway 99. That double, once you get accustomed to using that double roundabout, it makes that flow of traffic so beautiful in there. My 3rd favorite is the Tinsley roundabout on the M1 in Sheffield, which instead of looking left, turn right, you look right, turn left, but it's on the M1, a road that historically has pretty high speeds. But I recently took that roundabout, and the flow of traffic from the M1 into Sheffield is just remarkable because of the appropriate use of roundabouts. I love roundabouts, and people just need to get accustomed to using them because it is a wonderful way to provide safety. And the one there at Eldon Schaefer Boulevard is going to be wonderful because that is a terrible intersection. You take your life in your hands, literally. I look at the red dots on our map. fatalities at that intersection. You literally take your life in your hands when you make a left turn there. So back to the queue. Is anyone any comments? Vice Chair Trieger.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just want to appreciate the work of staff and the community and the responsiveness and the nimbleness of shifting and holding the essential goals intact, but making the shifts. And I'm excited to see this happen. It used to be my daily commute when I worked at the Arboretum to drive over 30th. I have several very active, serious cyclists in my family who routinely bike up into 30th. Told them changes are coming. And also just want to note there's another school in addition to Lane Community College, the Oak Hill School. So there are a lot of young folks using that corridor, and just very much appreciate all the work, the responsiveness, and how much the community stepped up to be part of this to make sure it's the plan that they want. And so you have my full support. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Trieger. Looking down the queue, I see no further. Oh, that's Commissioner Bozievich.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to quickly say I'm fully supportive of the plan. In my time as a Lane Community College board member back in 2003 to 2007, 30th Avenue safety concerns were big then. And here we are 20 years later, still trying to fix some of the problems. We did fix a little bit of it back when I was on the board at Gagne Road and did a little bit at Eldon Schaefer, but it's still a very dangerous road. And I do remember a faculty member actually got killed riding a bicycle to work during my tenure on the board there. So look forward to the improvements and the plan moving forward, and in full support.
Thank you, Commissioner Bozievich. Commissioner Bernie.
You had to think there for a minute, didn't you? I'd like to share my 7 favorite roundabouts in the world. No, I'm just kidding. The pace of government. It's interesting because this one of these very locations is where I got a speeding ticket when I took out my brand new Chrysler Sebring convertible. And I don't think that will occur with some of the improvements that you're discussing. I also am supportive of this. I think we'll move it forward. I don't think it's happening fast. I think it's happening slower than molasses, frankly, but it's happening, and that's a good sign. And I know that you have a lot of community support for this, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Bernie. Commissioner Buck.
This is my way that I get to Crestwell and Cottage Grove all the time. And they come up to Eugene in that same route quite a bit as well. It's highly traveled, and it's true, we don't have funding, but most people may not be aware that it takes 10, 20, 30 years to get transportation projects to actually come to fruition. A lot of long, hard work. I actually don't know many other parts of the county where our work takes quite that long to come to fruition. There are some things that take a while, but transportation projects are just fraught with the issue of a lot of planning, a lot of bureaucracy, but most of all, it's big money to do these kinds of projects. Transportation is just really, really expensive to construct, and to cobble up the money in order to do projects like these takes a good amount of time to get in the queue for a lot of state and federal funding in order to be able to provide this kind of service to the community. We don't have that kind of funding here locally. We really are at the mercy of state and federal funding for transportation projects. And that is one of the big reasons why they take so long. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Buck. And speaking about the cost of transportation projects, before you put a shovel in the ground, the costs are intense. It costs more to get ready to start a construction project in transportation than it used to cost to conduct the entire project. Just to do the studies that are involved, whether it be earthquake studies, whether it be environmental studies, all of the different things that go into place, millions of dollars before you even lift a shovel. So that is part of the reason that things are so expensive to build roads, particularly when waterways and bridges are involved. And Ms. Taylor, you represent, this short presentation that you gave represents a great deal of work, years of work that went into this. And we all know that that stretch of I-5 is an incomplete project. It wasn't designed to be that way. The lack of exits and entrances that make that entire stretch of I-5 very difficult to drive and very difficult to get on and off. But as with transportation projects, I don't know that we'll ever see that particular stretch completed to its original plans, where there were different exits and different egresses and ways to get onto 30th and other avenues. But that's a longer discussion, as Commissioner Buck has pointed out. It takes a lot of time just to get to the point we're at. Happy to be at this point where we are actually considering an order in front of us. So with that, we are considering Order 22-120605. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Moved by Commissioner Buck and seconded by Vice Chair Trieger. I didn't have to look, I heard that, so that was good. So we are considering Order 22-120605, discussion to the motion. And seeing no discussion, then very momentous occasion. I told you it's a big show today. I will call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously. Ms. Taylor, thank you very much, and thank you for your ongoing stellar star work. Thank you. And next in our big show, we have the Beatles. Oh, no, wait.
I coined the big show.
Next, we'll be considering Order 22-120606, discussion on financing a mixed waste processing facility to be located at the Short Mountain landfill and approving a contract with Bulk Handling Systems to develop 30% design plans for the facility expense in the amount of $195,000. Mr. Mokraiski, I'll ask you to introduce your panel. And Mr. Miller, by the way, I got the crate of papaya, but I have to send it back.
Say, yeah.
Mr. Hurley, Director Hurley, welcome.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. So excited to be back here with you to talk about this. Last month, I told you I was excited about this project, and it was neat to see your excitement too after seeing the amazing technology that they have here at Bulk Handling Systems. So I'm joined here by Jeff Orlandini, the Division Manager for our Waste Management Division, and Eric Herbert, the President at Bulk Handling Systems, and Steve Miller, the CEO at Bulk Handling. So just a minute here, let me get my notes out. So while this won't be the final action on this project, this is a milestone day for this project because we'll be asking at the end of the presentation for your formal direction to move down a path to start construction of a material recovery facility. We've been working at this for many years, and the Commissioner mentions the pace of government, but timing is everything on some things. So before I go on, I wanted to, since this is the last time I'll have the opportunity to be in front of Commissioner Burney and Commissioner Bozovich as commissioners, I wanted to thank both of them for their work in supporting the Solid Waste Division at Lane County to be able to get to this point. Commissioner Bozovich, if he's still with us, was on the board in 2013 when I became the division manager at the Waste Management Division, and found that we hadn't raised tipping fee rates for many years, and we didn't have enough money to save for the next phase of the landfill. Commissioner Bozovich recommended that we do an assessment of the solid waste system to identify efficiencies and to get on a path for implementing incremental CPI adjustments to our tipping fee so that we could be on solid financial footing. Without being on financial footing like we are today, we wouldn't be able to even consider this project. So thank you for your support, Commissioner Bozovich. And Commissioner Burney has been a champion for this project since the beginning of your tenure on the board. Early on, helped organize arrange a meeting with Bulk Handling Systems, and we started exploring this project. Commissioner Burney also went down with our second community contingent down to California to tour some of the facilities that Bulk Handling Systems had built there and see those in operation. And thank you for your continuing support to build support for this project in the community, Commissioner Burney. So wanted to recognize that, and then just talk about some context around this project. This isn't a flash in the pan project. We have been working on this diligently for several years. This really started back in 2015 when the Department of Environmental Quality came to us and required that we set an aspirational goal for our waste recovery. And at that time, we set a goal of achieving a 63% waste recovery by 2025. So that's what you would call a SMART goal. You're probably familiar with a SMART goal and the acronym there, something that's specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and timely. So, you know, with that goal, clearly specific, measurable, and time-bound. But we really needed to make the case that it was relevant and achievable. And so that is what we've been working on for the last several years, you know, with the context that it is relevant. That started with putting together our solid waste master plan, and then our climate action plan that identified the landfill as the largest emitter of carbon in Ifrit County operations. What else? Sorry, lost train of thought there. And our strategic plan. We put it directly into our strategic plan to fully vet building a material recovery facility at the landfill. The second piece of it being achievable, we needed to work through a competitive process to see what proposals would come out there to see if could we achieve this vision of a 63% recovery. Bulk handling systems delivered the top proposal for that, allowing us to exceed that. And you'll hear more about that today. So we started last month bringing this proposal to you, and we all got pretty wowed by the technology, and that spurred some lively conversation that actually prevented us from finishing the presentation. So they're here today to finish that presentation and talk more about the relevance of this project and the achievability of this project. Again, going back to, you know, timing is everything. While it would have been great to start this project actually 10 years ago, Steve Miller, I met when he pitched a material recovery facility at Glenwood, but we weren't able to move forward at that time. Now we're positioned very well with the context of the relevance of it, and also with the federal funding that's come down through the Inflation Reduction Act. With that funding, we have the opportunity now to have more than 40% of this project covered by federal dollars. So it's pretty exciting to be able to see that this is, you know, potentially becoming a reality. I think we can get there at this point, becoming more and more comfortable with the financing on this. Over the last several months, we've been starting to look into this, and we will return with a financial plan if the board gives direction at the end of the presentation here. But I'm confident now that we can deliver this project in a range that will minimally affect the ratepayers in Lane County and keep it in a range that's comparable to other counties. So with that, I will pass to Jeff or Steve, who's taking off.
Great.
Okay.
We're going to debate later which one of the Beatles each of us are. Well, thank you. Pleasure to be here again, and appreciate the time that you're giving us. As Dan said, we didn't get through all of the details around our presentation yesterday, or last month rather, and thought that it would be of interest to talk through some of the specifics related to the facility. Here's a depiction slightly different than what we had presented last time. And this is a sort of an update view from the work that has been done in engineering and siting, and really going through the details of bringing this project to life. There's still more work to be done. There's a specific request at the end, but we do have, we think, largely very similar. All of the elements that we had previously are still in, just oriented a little bit differently. As Dan said, one of the key motivators, and there were two, one being a diversion of waste from landfill. We had a goal of 60,000 tons. We've exceeded that goal. And today we're planning, estimating somewhere around 110,000 tons of diversion. So rather than the 63% level that is in the plan, will actually be a little bit north of 70%. And how much further really will depend on markets. But we're equipping the facility to extract all those things today that have value in the commercial space. We have additional tonnages as well, potentially, from aligning with EcoSort with construction and demolition waste. So we're still working through those plans with them. They have an interest in building out a a more technologically advanced system at their location. And we're speaking with them about how we can organize so that rather than have redundant facilities, they complement one another. And then finally, we've equipped the facility with a single stream processing capability. And today, all of the recyclables collected within the county are sent outside of the county for processing, typically into the Portland or Vancouver, Washington area. We have so much of the technology we're using to process municipal solid waste can also be used to process single stream recyclables. So we have added a line that will enable all of that processing to occur at Short Mountain. And there are some benefits, and we'll talk about a couple of those downstream. In terms of carbon emissions, that's of course, the other large value that was specified in the request for proposals. We're estimating roughly 100,000 metric ton equivalents of carbon removed. And that comes from the processing of organic waste, doing it in a purposeful way where we extract it from the waste stream and we immediately put it into our anaerobic digestion system, which will then convert some percentage of the solids into gas. That gas then has a very high methane content, and after some additional cleaning, becomes available to be injected into the pipeline. And rather than go to atmosphere, which occurs today. We have an additional value, I think, if you also put in, not included in that 100,000 ton figure, would be the value of the emissions from transporting the single stream recyclables. So all of them are, of course, put into a truck. The truck burns diesel and travels to these markets, and we'll eliminate that activity with this facility. In terms of, you've heard, of course, from the folks at Far West Steel and from Cambridge, and you're hearing, or Chambers, sorry about that, Dave. You've heard the economic impact. Just from manufacturing jobs, we're estimating about 90 persons. When you add in the 50 persons from construction, that brings 140 high-paying manufacturing construction jobs directly related to this project within the county, just from those three sources. As Mike Donahue mentioned, there are, of course, other parts of the supply chain that will also benefit. And so there's some larger impact from this. But those are the direct jobs. We then have 50 persons that will work at the facility ongoing. And these also prevailing wage positions, technical maintenance staff, operations staff, and all working to manage the facility itself. In total, we're projecting $100 million investment. Roughly 30% of that will be borne by the county to build out the facilities at Short Mountain, and then we'll be funding the balance. The gas itself, we're producing a transportation fuel. And we tend to think of that in terms of the number of diesel gallon equivalents. So all these trucks, as they convert from diesel to compressed natural gas, roughly each one, a standard bus or a waste vehicle consumes about 10,000 gallons of diesel every year. We're producing 1.3 million diesel gallon equivalents, so enough to supply all of the fuel for 130 of these vehicles, which is a very, very significant number. This will be among the largest facilities and producers of renewable natural gas anywhere. And so we're very excited about that. We're also excited about the potential to do this within the context of the Oregon Clean Fuels Program. That program was developed specifically for this type of activity. And the recently passed Inflation Reduction Act includes a climate provision. There's an investment tax credit as part of that, and will also collectively benefit from that.
Mr. Miller, did you say 130 vehicles?
I did.
130?
I did, yeah. Yeah, on average, that's, so if you look at a bus through Lane County Transit or anywhere else, it's about 10,000 gallons that they'll use in a year. A waste vehicle, many have converted over to compressed natural gas, and roughly they use about that same number. We have a comparable system that we built where we have 13. It's a very small system, 13 vehicles that collect the waste in a community every day are fueled by the energy generated from that waste. So truly a circular economy model. We, of course, are also going to generate recyclables. And when you think about a material recovery facility, that's the standard thing that they do. And we'll be generating all the usual kinds of recycling material, water bottles made out of PET, milk jugs and other forms of high density polyethylene, cardboard, mixed paper, aluminum cans, ferrous metals, and those are pretty standard. And in the Lane County system, those are the items that are now collected. Our system will go beyond that, where we'll also include other forms of PET, things like thermoform trays. We'll be recovering all polypropylene, one of the largest plastic items now put into the space. And we'll also recover low density polyethylene film, plastic bags. And so we're going well beyond what's available today, not only for the single streams that are collected, but we'll also be recovering those from the municipal waste stream. So really much more value, I think, than what is currently experienced. A key part of the program, of course, is the Education Center. We have a graphic here that shows a nice building, and there's a lot of education that goes on inside. But these are pretty standard in public sector facilities, and what we would expect is a consistent stream of people coming through. Certainly, this will be part of the school's agenda. Many of the facilities that we've done in the past, it's not unusual to have 2 or 3 of these sessions every day for really all of the kids in the area. There are also other interested parties that come through, business people who want to promote environmental values, and we think that's a really important part of the system, and it's fundamental in our design. So I think with that, that sort of gives you the basics, and I'm going to hand it back to Dan to kind of go through some of the details around the specifics of the plan here.
Okay, yeah. So the second slide showed you the rendering of the building that was actually placed at Short Mountain in the location that we're currently looking at. And so you know, essentially it's sited at Short Mountain, which helps us a lot with some of that bureaucracy we were talking about earlier with a county-owned property permitted for things like this. We would develop and own the site and the buildings. So when we talk about that $100 million price tag overall, 30 million of that is to actually construct the building. I think it's very important to note that by extending the life of the landfill by 1/3, which is what this would do. So when we divert 125,000 tons of waste, we typically take in about 300,000 tons. So we're talking about reducing the amount going into Short Mountain by about 1/3. That extends the life of the landfill over 25 years. by doing that, that reduces the amount of money we need to put into closure, post-closure, and our future cell development costs because we're extending the life of those cells. So that equates to a little over $1 million a year that we would have to budget for normally in order to operate the landfill, that we could then take over $1 million a year and put that towards the building, which essentially pays for that $30 million over the partnership term. So, you know, day one, we save enough on those things to pay for 30% of this project. Any of those federal funds, those other fundings that we get, if we're able to get that building funded elsewhere, then we're able to apply those savings to what typically maybe the ratepayer might have to pay in order to pay the rest of that funding. So it's very exciting to see that. As mentioned, the third bullet point, while the county is kind of on the hook, if you will, for that $30 million building, bulk handling is getting the financing for the remainder of that $70 million to get this facility up and operational and to operate it for the duration of the contract term. It definitely meets our climate goals. It exceeds our diversion rate goals. Commissioner Bernie and I went down and saw some of these facilities. They oftentimes, you know, we know as we dial these things in, if they don't necessarily divert 125,000 tons, they divert most of that. You don't want to necessarily say we're going with a partner that will get us just to that goal, right? Because if composition of the waste changes and we may not meet that, this is exceeding our goal by almost 10%. So we have no doubt that we will exceed that diversion goal by going with bulk handling and building this. And then, you know, exciting is that once we get a contract in place and we're able to sign that in 24 months, we have this built and operational. And so our hope is that by the end of this fiscal year, we can have that contract in place, and that, you know, in 2 years from then, we would be starting somewhere around, you know, July of 25. Which is that kind of deadline for our diversion goal. So we may not meet it on the date that we were supposed to, but we'll be exceeding it within months of that. So, you know, I think this shows, I do not think that we could on our own, without a public-private partnership, you know, find a way to finance $100 million up front and run this facility. So we've talked a little bit about the finance plan. And so again, what we can do is, by having that 2-year lead time, we also can do modest fee increases at Short Mountain in order to put money aside for the startup, right? So when it starts, so we're not going to wait and do one kind of larger fee increase. We would do more modest ones over the next couple of years so that we're able to decrease, you know, that impact on our ratepayers. What that would be, you know, really is dependent upon future conversations with our city partners and with bulk handling, with some of that federal funding to determine what that final number would be. And there's also a lot of savings in here, in particular with that recycling stream, you know, where recycle markets are extremely volatile. We're really at the whim of these Portland markets. We're not first in line with them, you know, their local communities are. And so, you know, it's really volatile in terms of what we pay every year to recycle. And so this would really see a tremendous amount of cost savings there, which helps reduce the burden in terms of that fee increase. And then we already talked about, you know, what it means a landfill, to extend the landfill life, and how the monetary savings there. So I think we'll go to next steps. And so these are our next steps, and we'll end this with our ask of you. And so we're needing to complete that preliminary design. So the design looks really nice. We need to get that to 30%, which really gives you a firm estimate of what the construction costs will be. So we'll know that. You know, we need to do that community outreach. We want to educate our city partners and stakeholders, as well as, you know, the public, on what this may mean to the fees at Short Mountain, and therefore what that might mean to the person at the curb. And Dan's going to talk a little bit about some of the our plan on the county side to try to secure some of those federal dollars, again, to decrease that $30 million price tag for us.
So with the Inflation Reduction Act, there are a few grant programs out right now. One of them is called SWIFR, Solid Waste infrastructure for recycling. That's up to a $4 million grant that we'll be putting a package together for. If we can't make it by January, by next January, it'll be an annual program for, I think, the next 5 years. We'll also be looking at potential state funding for this, talking with our policy team and our lobbyist. They feel that this aligns strongly with our legislative priorities being in our strategic plan, and that this aligns with climate goals of the state. So we're hoping to ask for 30 million of the state in lottery funds, if that is acceptable by the board, as we'll have more discussions around our legislative priorities. But the potential for some state funding, and then the other big pieces of the federal funding on the production tax credit, which Steve or Eric could probably talk more about if you have questions on that piece of it.
And so I think, yeah, we'll go to kind of what we're asking. And another point I'd like to make is when we look at our comparator counties, we are the lowest in terms of what we charge for our waste services. Whether that's looking at what other folks charge per ton at their transfer stations or their minimum charges. So we do have, we've always been very proud of having that low price and being lower, but this would put us still in the lower portion of our comparators, even with having this technology, which is pretty amazing that we could build a facility like this, state of the art, one of a kind in Oregon, and have that right here in Lane County, and still be, probably more in the middle of our comparators in terms of what we'd be charging in terms of a tip fee. So that's a very exciting proposition for us as well. So what we need today, what we're looking for, is first to approve our engineering contract. That is the actual board order in front of you. And so this allows us to finish the 30% design plans, which, like I said, will give us a firm construction cost. So we know how close that 30 million estimate will be in terms of constructing at Short Mountain. So we need additional monies that the board has to approve in order to finish that process, which will give us that sense, which will help us tremendously with the final financing numbers. We are also hoping that the board will direct staff along with Bolton County to continue and to work with our cities to develop intergovernmental contracts to really make sure that, in particular, our cities of Eugene and Springfield are on board with this plan, and with ensuring that we're able to send waste to Short Mountain to be processed, and have that intergovernmental agreements in order to have that long-term partnership. And then lastly, that we would return with the contract ready for execution on the full project to the Board of Commissioners. And, that's really in order for us to go forward with this and to start really making that happen. Any questions?
We may ask if you have a date on number 3, but we'll get to that during discussion. So very good. Well, marvelous presentation. We've all been highly anticipatory of this particular presentation and looking forward to this step that we're going through today. Commissioner Bernie. Aha.
Chair Farr likes to put me on the spot. A couple of things. One is I see your request not unlike the request that's been made of this body, which we approved, to look at the design of an outdoor stadium. And until we know how much money we're looking at, it's hard to look at how much money we're looking at. So this doesn't seem out. This seems perfectly logical. I do want to make a couple of comments. One, when I had the opportunity a few years ago to visit some of those facilities that Mr. Orlandini mentioned, there was one negative. I mean, everyone was as enthused as I believe this body is. I certainly am. And that was the labor of sorting different materials on the line. It looked very much like the worst of sort of the old labor factories. And so I just want to point out that in that short period, my understanding, Mr. Miller, is that you've developed a artificial intelligence that has taken the drudgery work out of the process. And all of those people that viewed that with me, including the director of Bring Recycling, would applaud you for doing that. So I think that's something I wanted to point out. I also, if I may, would like to point out very quickly, 12 years ago, I was going back and forth to El Salvador at the request of President Nunez because of a long relationship. And that country, we helped a bank of attorneys from the International Monetary Fund and the country of El Salvador rewrite that country's laws on public-private partnerships because of the nature of what was happening there. And where they ended up not only enabled them to secure $960 million from the World Bank through its International Monetary Fund, but looks fundamentally like the structure of this public-private partnership, where the private partners whose business it was would be providing half to 2/3 of the financing for any venture, and the public entities, in that case they were municipalities or cooperatives, would co-own and provide roughly 1/3. So it's fascinating to me, given that backdrop of my personal experience, to see where you've landed. And I just think this is of the highest integrity. I have more to say later. We need to get this onto the drawing board and into the ground. But once we do get this into the ground, this gives Lane County the opportunity to also partner with expanding this market across the state and across the nation. I would like to also say, Chair, that I've already spoken to Springfield's Mayor Van Gordon. We are setting a meeting with several of the Springfield city councilors and with Mr. Miller and Mr. Egan and Mr. Bakke. And without giving up a trade secret, in the State of the City address by Springfield's mayor, he is going to be referring to Springfield's desire to partner with the county in this facility. So I just wanted to share all of those items, and I'm totally in support of moving forward. Thank you.
And I apologize, Commissioner Burney, for putting you on the spot, but I presumed you had plenty to say about this particular issue since you've been covering it.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity, Chair.
You'll have another opportunity before we finish.
Thank you.
So I'll look down the queue. Vice Chair Trieger,
Go ahead.
followed by Commissioner Buck.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Very simple. One is, if we could get the slides, I would really appreciate that. I'd like to be able to refer back to them. And then just one very specific and sort of in the weeds, but there might be people watching who have this question. We've heard from constituents over the last couple of years with a desire for a polystyrene ban in the community. And you mentioned several other polycarbons and other plastics that this facility will be able to handle. What, if any, impact on polystyrene?
Really not in our plan at the moment. That's a developing story. However, we have other engagements with the leading makers of polystyrene, and that are looking for solutions, and but nothing that we can bring yet to this facility.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Commissioner Buck.
Thank you. I'll just make a comment that on that polystyrene, St. Vincent de Paul's currently recycles, but I have to say it's not a moneymaker.
Right.
It's a hard one. It's a hard nut to crack. And I'm sure we'll get there eventually, but I think places like this is where we'll actually see solutions at a space where it makes sense economically. One-off packaging, recycling that you get with things you buy is just not enough. It's not an economy of scale to make its reuse actually make any economic sense. And hopefully we can try to find a different packaging style instead. My question was, you had mentioned that you thought we'd possibly be back here in about 6 months or so for after this work is done, should we pass it today, which I think we will, for an approval of the main full package. Is that about right? Is that how we're going to see this laid out in the next 6 months?
Yeah, I believe so. And Chair Farr, I think to answer your first question, we don't know when we'll come back. You know, what we want to do is get those agreements with the cities. And it sounds like, you know, City of Springfield and we would assume City of Eugene, this fits in their climate goals, that they would be, you know, supportive of that. Once we can get those agreements and then get our final financial numbers and package done, then we can come back, and it is a 25, 30-year agreement that we would be signing. And that's what the board would be presented with, would be, you know, approval of that contract in order to then, you know, put shovels in the ground and then build the facility.
And would those agreements need to pass through their city council?
I would,
Most likely.
yeah, I would think so.
I asked that because trying to get it through city council meetings and on their agendas within 6 months is going to be challenging. But hopefully you've already made strides in communication on those. And hopefully they'll know the excitement surrounding what this would mean to the community, that they might be able to continue to push that through as well. I just want to make sure that we're able to maintain that timeline, because I'm excited to get this going, knowing that it could take a full 2 years to come to fruition and be fully ready to run. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Buck. And you know, I spent 10 years on the Eugene City Council, and what she says is pretty accurate. It's tough to get things through, and because of that 10 years, I do reserve the right to say what I want about the City of Eugene and the City Council. So with that, Commissioner Bozievich.
Thank you, Chair. You know, I think I'm in support of moving forward with getting more information to get final answers on this project, but I won't be here as we get those answers. So I just want to make a couple statements about things that the board needs to be looking at in the future. One of those things is the impact on tipping fees, including the impact of the change of the Glenwood transfer station in addition to this, because that's, you know, estimated at 50 million to move the Glenwood transfer station. You know, 72% diversion is great. We could probably get 100% diversion, but our tipping fees and ultimately what people pay for at the curb pickup would be outrageous. So we have to balance what people can afford to pay, because this is something that is paid evenly amongst everyone in our community, no matter of income or, you know, it's a non-discriminatory service everyone has to pay for somehow or another. So be cautious about cost in the future. And with that, keep in mind that there is the existing facility in Juneau. I do believe some of the numbers that were provided in November underestimated the capacity at Juneau, from what I'm being told by folks in the industry, that it's significantly higher than we were told at that time. So is that piece that is there, but it's an exciting technology. You know, I had an engineer for bulk handling as a next door neighbor for several years out here in Elmira. So, you know, and that was back in like 06 to 09 time period. So I've been aware of their capabilities for quite a while. But I just, you know, the caution in the future is what is the rates going to be, and can somebody on a fixed income that, you know, is trying to live out there, you know, to age in place, or folks that are new in the community or young and lower income earners, will they be able to afford that increase? And to keep that in mind as we move forward, and look for the most cost-effective solution that gets us to the goal of 63%. You know, and if we're going to go past that goal, what's that cost at the curb has got to be considered for folks. So, but that all said, I think I've got enough information that I you know, just like with the outdoor multi-use facility, we need to spend a little money to get accurate information to answer those questions. And it's like Dan and other people have stated earlier, it's very difficult to estimate the impact on tipping fees because we don't know. So just that caution to please keep in mind, everybody pays for those tipping fees ultimately for their curb service.
Excuse me. Thank you, Commissioner Bozievich. And commissioners have said much of the things that I would say, other than the hurrahs and cheers. And to the board, we have three things that we need to consider today. First is relatively easy. It's a board order, and I'll ask for a motion on that board order in a little bit here. The second two items, Mr. Mokrasky, I'm going to look to you. We'll be looking to direct staff to work with cities regarding an intergovernmental contracts. And I'm going to ask if you want a motion for that or just head nods. Think about that a moment. And the second is the third item is to return with a contract, whether you want a motion or head nods on that. So as we get down to that. But first, a couple of things regarding bringing things close to home. You know, bringing all of the facilities that currently we're farming out to Vancouver and Portland and Toledo and other places that process beadboard, for instance, which isn't a part of this discussion. You know, rather than sending that down the highway, we're keeping it home and actually not just recycling it at home, but actually turning it into products right here in our home. I'm excited about a lot of the peripherals that are involved with that. When you show the education center, you know, I'm on the Metropolitan Wastewater Management Commission. We have what we call Clean Water University, where schools, classrooms actually come in and learn about why and how we process water to turn the dirty water into clean water and put it back in the river. I see a similar sort of opportunity here for young kids from an early age to learn not just how, but why do we do it and what happens once we do it. You know, it's pretty exciting to see that building that you showed a conceptual of, and I am looking forward to that. Just a couple of other quick comments. Tipping fees, Mr. Hurley, Director Hurley, excuse me, you'd said that what we're talking about really at this point has no dramatic increase in tipping fees inside.
We're still working through that. I mean, I don't want to throw out a number yet, Chair.
Yeah.
But Jeff actually has the list of, you know, our comparative counties, and you could talk through that. I think we have a lot of leeway within that range. If you want to share what you have there, Jeff.
Yeah, just, you know, in researching, you know, Douglas County just started charging fees not too long ago when they realized their landfill, you know, needed closure, post-closure. They're $94 a ton. We're at $88.93 right now. There's a 4% discount off that rate at Short Mountain for the haulers that are bringing it directly there. Washington County is 106 a ton. Marion's 107. Multnoma's 148. Those are, you know, kind of Portland area. Obviously, we're not proposing to bring our fees up to 148 a ton, and I have moved forward with this process saying, you know, if we have to double our rates, it's a non-starter. You know, if we have to do a tremendous increase, it'd be a non-starter. I think if we don't get $1 of federal support and have to finance the whole 100 million, obviously that would be a larger fee increase than dollars that we get. We feel very confident that we'll be able to do that. And that's what we want to come back with, is these are the federal monies that we've secured. And this is, we can get very exact on what the fee increases would be per year, right? So we can go out, you know, from next year until the facility starts, and the 2 or 3 years to start that, so that we can show what it would impact. But we do need to have these firm numbers in order to know what those would be.
Thank you. And the first order that we're going to pass today will help us move toward getting those firm numbers. The authorization, as both Commissioner Bernie and Commissioner Bozievich have mentioned, that we're putting out a little bit of money early to understand exactly what it's going to take to make this happen. Right. We're all in favor of it happening, but there are, as you say, non-starters that potentially could impact the ultimate outcome. Second thing I'll talk about is Juneau in Toledo. We talk about Juneau. We send products to Juneau currently, but back in 2003, I was in the legislature, and we approved the Oregon Transportation Improvement Act 2, which gave us a new highway between Philomath and Toledo, basically. It also gave us the Willamette Crossing Bridge, and that was Representative Alan Brown was the key figure in getting all of that happening. That's an aside. Even though we do have a new highway from Philomath to Toledo, still a heck of a drive. You know, it's still a heck of a drive to transport truckload after truckload after truckload of materials, keeping it home. That's a goal that we all have, and that's what we're seeing in the crosshairs right now, is how do we keep this stuff home. I have nothing further to say. But I did promise Commissioner Burney that he'd have another opportunity. Commissioner Burney.
Thank you, Chair. Gentlemen, it would be remiss if, I'm sorry, I'm going to embarrass someone in the audience. It would be remiss if I didn't mention to you that we have a Springfield City Councilor in the audience in her off time. She's also a county employee, but Corey Rodley is here, and Corey is with the Springfield City Council, and this will be coming up with them. So just to let you know. Another quick comment. One thing I'll be doing some minor consulting on after I leave this body relates to, interestingly, construction and education. Let me just share an interesting interface and suggest over the next year or two, we unwrap this a little on behalf of the students of Lincoln County. In the Infrastructure Act, there is $833 billion for improving air quality and air handling and energy efficiency in public schools across the country. To receive, and by the way, I'm saying this and congratulating this body. Sorry. As fate would have it, in that infrastructure package for public school districts that have either project labor agreements or in Oregon, community benefit agreements with union building trades, they receive a 20% higher priority in competing for accessing those dollars. I see your education center, having visited one, as fitting into a category in partnership with Lane County Schools, including through which the Lane ESD, which I was a board member for 12 years on, is ripe with opportunity. So I think I'm just illustrating, Chair, that as we move forward, there are many opportunities to generate so many benefits for our community. Forgive me, there's that word again, community benefit, for our community than we're even anticipating, than the direct line on climate mitigation and MRF and organics to clean energy that we're looking at right now. So I just wanted to mention that, and thank you for the opportunity, Chair.
And thank you, Commissioner Burney. And, you know, as we get close to the local level, that's where we can generate efficiencies and find ways to make every penny count, because those billions of dollars sound like big amounts of money. All those billions of dollars come from your paycheck and my paycheck and everybody's paycheck who's listening to this, you know, so it's up to us to provide that efficiency. And that's what I'm seeing happening here today. So I'm excited about moving forward, Vice Chair Trieger, with the next order. So, and unless any further discussion, then who wants to make the motion on the first order?
I'll make the motion if I could see it. Forgive me.
Yeah.
I brought the wrong glasses. You can appreciate
You
it.
want my readers here?
I would love your readers. Thank you so much, Commissioner. Chair, I move approval of, or thank you. I move approval of order 22-12-06-06, financing a mixed waste processing facility to be located at the Short Mountain landfill and approving a contract with Bulk Handling Systems to develop 30% design plans for the facility, expensing the amount of $195,000.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Burney and seconded by Vice Chair Trieger, excuse me. We have order number 22-12-06-06. Discussion to the motion. I see no discussion to the motion. Then, with the great happiness, Mr. Mokrahas.
I was just going to suggest here that maybe in the motion you say, and also directing staff to work with our city partners and to return with a contract.
And directing staff to work with our city partners and come back with a contract.
Second.
There's an echo in here. Very good. Then that covers 1 and 3. So with that, further discussion to the motion. I see none. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. You're muted, Commissioner.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. So that covered the board order, and it also covered to return with the contract. The second thing that we'd like to direct staff to do is to work with the cities. That was mentioned, that's all inherent in that. So that's all covered. So you have all the directions that you need. And Mr. Mokrycki, you have all your assignments that you need. Further discussion? Wow, what a great moment. And like the previous item, a lot of work, years of work has gone into this, years of diligent work and development of product that makes this opportunity available to us. What a great point in the future where we have a flagship facility right here in the county where people who provide the materials, people who build the products can actually go see, build the facilities that operate the products and actually see the fruit of their labor. So wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
And to the board that keeps us exactly on time. Exactly on
I
time.
had to say it.
Oh, no, I did. We're pitching a shutout.
Look at the self-congratulations between the chair and vice chair.
That was an admonishment that just got from the vice chair.
Wait till
We're
the
talking
meeting
about
is
the shutout.
adjourned to congratulate our time management.
All right, then Mr. Mokrycki will move down the agenda to item 7A, which is Order 22-120607 in the matter of appointing a county council. We've assigned 10 minutes to this item, Mr. Mokrycki.
Thank you, Chair. Alana Holmes, our HR Director, and Ryan McBride from Human Resources to walk through this item for you.
Thank you.
Chair, Commissioners, good morning. As the memo says, we're here to discuss the matter of appointing a new county council. And we're asking the board to appoint Aaron Pettigrew as Lane County Council and for you to direct HR staff to finalize the employment agreement as well as authorize the board chair to execute the final employment agreement. So just a little bit of background to this. On August 30th and September 28th, the board met in executive session for review and discussion of applicants for this role. On November 2nd, initial interviews were held and interview panels were a mix of county council staff members, department leaders, and the board. On November 17th, follow-up interviews were held with the board in executive session. Thereafter, moving into public session, the board voted to direct staff to negotiate an employment agreement with Ms. Pettigrew for the position of Lane County Council. This work has been completed. The employment agreement, which is attached to the board memo, includes the starting salary for Ms. Pettigrew within the salary range previously approved by the board on July 19th, 2022. Ms. Pettigrew's start date in the role will be January 17th, 2023. This agreement also outlines other items such as a performance review schedule, COLAs, deferred comp, and other benefits as well. Ms. Pettigrew does plan on spending some time with County Council Dingle at the end of this year to assist in a smooth transition within the department. And there will be more to come, I'm sure, on that. So at this time, the options are to approve the appointment of Aaron Pettigrew as County Council, direct Human Resources staff to finalize the employment agreement and authorize the board chair to execute the final agreement, or to not approve the appointment of Aaron Pettigrew and provide staff with further direction. So with that, I'll turn it back to the chair for any additional comments and questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Holmes. Ms. McBride, anything you need to add to that?
For me, Chair.
And thank you from me for your work in bringing us to this point. Then I'll turn it over to the board for discussion and look to a queue for discussion. And Commissioner Bozievich, are you with us? Yes, there you are. Looking to a queue for discussion. I'm seeing no discussion at this point in time. So I'll call on Vice Chair Trego. We have before us the actual contract that has been agreed to by Ms. Pettigrew. And this is the final step in that, in the board ratifying, in effect, the contract that's been agreed to by with Ms. Pettigrew. Vice Chair Trego.
Thank you, Chair. I will move approval of Order 22-12-06-07 in the matter of appointing a county council.
I'll second.
Moved by Vice Chair Trigger and seconded by Commissioner Buck. Do we have further discussion to the motion? I'll begin with Commissioner Bozievich online. And in the audience, you can see Commissioner Bozievich to my left, to your right.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. I just want to explain why I'm going to be voting against this motion. I believe that this is a final attempt by a lame duck majority of the board to put in place an activist county council against the recommendations of some of the panels and with a non-unanimous vote. I'm sorry they moved forward with this the way they did. They didn't want to involve candidates for my seat. They didn't want to involve the incoming commissioner-elect for the Springfield seat. And I do not support the process, and I do not support the appointment, and I will be voting no.
Thank you for that explanation, Commissioner Bozovich. Did I see a hand to my left or to my right? Then we have before us Order 22-1206-07. Do I have a motion?
The table.
Oh, the motion's on the table. All right, I got a little bit. Then no further discussion to the motion. I will state that there was we had a healthy debate, quite a bit of debate, both in executive session and outside of executive session, that brought us to the point we're at to ratify this contract as a Board of County Commissioners. The majority of the board has put forward this contract, and at this point in time, we will be voting on that contract. So with that, no further discussion, I will call for the vote. We're considering Order 22-1206-07 in the matter of appointing a county council. I'll ask all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Passes 4-1 with Commissioner Bozovich in opposite. Thank you, Director Holmes. Thank you, Mr. McBride, and thank you, Mr. McBride.
Thank you, Chair and Commissioners.
Chair, if I may. I'm sorry.
You certainly may.
I'm sorry.
You've earned the right to may. So
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Despite the sour grapes of another lame duck commissioner, as I am one too, I just want to say that I think that this body, I envy this body being able to work with Ms. Pettigrew. I was so impressed with her during the interviews. I was so impressed with the questions. I believe county staff is also looking forward to it. So I just want to say how fortunate you all are to work with Ms. Pettigrew moving forward. Thank you.
And thank you, Commissioner Burney. I'm going to make a quick announcement. I always love to do this when fellow elected officials join the room. I'd like to point out that Senator James Manning has joined us. Senator James Manning is my senator from my district, Senator Manning, and Senator Lee Byer has also joined us. So Senator Byer from Springfield. So,
but if I may, they're my senators today. Thank you, Chair.
They're all Oregonians, senators, for that matter. And I'm proud to have you in the audience here at Harris Hall today. Thank you very much. Then we'll move along with item 8, which is County Council. I believe we have no County Council announcements at this point in time. Mr. Mokrahayski, Order 2212 2211-2902 in the matter of appointing members to the Lane County Charter Review Committee. Mr. Mokrahayski.
Thank you, Chair. Jenna Cusimano, our interim community and economic development manager, is here to do great work on this, and so she'll give you an update on the appointment of these members.
Good morning, Chair Farr, Commissioners. Thank you for having me this morning. So before you today, you have an order to approve the final 2 members of the Charter Review Committee. If you recall, we began the process of convening this new Charter Review Committee back in July. In September, actually August 11th through September, we had an application period for new applicants to the Charter Review Committee. We did receive a total of 12 applications during that period. From those 12 applicants, you had all appointed 5 to be part of the initial Charter Review Committee, each commissioner appointing 1 member. Those 5 committee members met on November 3rd with the sole task of selecting 2 candidates to nominate to you all as the board to appoint as a whole for the final 2 of the 7 members of the Charter Review Committee. Those initial 5 members did come to consensus on their 2 nominees, being Sarai Johnson and Kevin Cronin, as outlined in the attached board order. So for you today is just to approve the formalizing the appointment of those 2 nominees. So unless there's any questions or discussions, I don't have any additional information at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Kuzumano. Discussion to, in response to the staff presentation? Is that your hand raised, Commissioner Bozievich, or is that your cursor that's moving around your screen? I think it's your cursor. Very good. Then with no further discussion to the motion, we have before us order 2212, 2211, 2902. And I'll explain my vote. It will be a no. I think that the process that we went through in selecting the 2 additional members could have been potentially a more public process, and I think that this is a pretty important committee. I've made my appointment, and my appointee was presumably a part of the discussion, but I would prefer that we look at a little further down the list. So with that, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? I'm sorry. Oh, we need a motion first. That's right. I'll call for the vote to have a motion. Vice Chair Trieger. Oh, I'm sorry. Further discussion? Vice Commissioner Buck.
I'll make a motion to get the discussion going. I'll move approval of order 22-11-29-02 in the matter of appointing members to Lane County Charter Review Committee.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Buck and seconded by Commissioner Burney. Discussion to the motion, Vice Chair Trieger. And thank you. That's not your cursor. I see your actual yellow hand up there, Commissioner Bozievich, followed by Vice Chair Trieger.
Thank you, Chair. I asked to have this pulled from the consent calendar last week for separate discussion. You know, one of the people that is on this list to be appointed is a former paid political consultant to 2 commissioners that are currently serving. His presence on the independent redistricting committee tainted that process. His presence on this committee, I believe, will taint this review process also. I was careful to appoint somebody I thought could look at the charter in a neutral way and try and make improvements where needed and not make changes where they weren't needed. Somebody that was a former commissioner and also happens to be an attorney. And I was hoping to see this not become a political process. And appointment of a former political consultant and also a active member of a public employees union that we negotiate with regularly is just probably not the right person to be on this committee. So therefore I'll be voting no, and that's why I pulled it off the consent calendar. Similar to my vote against appointing somebody that had no general counsel experience to be our general counsel.
Thank you for that explanation, Commissioner Bozievich. Vice Chair Trieger.
Thank you, Chair. I'll hold off on comment as to whether the committee is being politicized because of consultant when there's a former elected on it, but I will comment since the matter of process was brought up for the purposes of the public. The process for this, similar to with the redistricting, was we opened up to the general public to receive applications. Those applications came to us as commissioners redacted with the identifying information removed. We each appointed one. And then those 5 from the remaining applications were to forward to us recommendations for the remaining 2 seats. Just like with redistricting, part of the point of keeping us a little bit at arm's length is to engage the community, to trust our constituents, and to give them the opportunity to be actively engaged in the democratic process and in the governance of this organization that is here to serve them. And so regardless of what any of us, or at least speaking for myself, might think about any particular applicant, I'm going to trust the will of the group that we charged with making an appointment to make their selection. If we're going to talk at all about process, moving further down the line, as I have with all of our committees, I would like us to discuss more our recruitment and posting and how we outreach to the community so that folks know these opportunities exist. But unless and until we have substantive conversation to get broader application pools for these kinds of opportunities, this is the process that we have. And I think we have followed the process, and I think it's an integrous one. And I want to support the members of the committee that we've charged with advancing these recommendations to us. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Trieger, for the discussion. Commissioner Burney, followed by Commissioner Buck.
Let's forget for a moment that Commissioner Bozovich, that's kind of like the pot calling the kettle black.
Let's avoid personal interaction.
Well,
during our discussion, please.
But the question, yes, sir. The question though was politicizing this committee, and I don't think that was a fair comparison. But I will say this for the public: we're not voting on anyone that any commissioner nominated to be on this body. We are simply approving the nominations by the body we did approve for the remaining 2 slots. So either we accept the process as is, or we change it moving forward, but we certainly don't incorporate our own additional names into this process. These were submitted to us. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Burney. Commissioner Buck.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to be clear that one of the appointees that is being discussed in this particular order was in no way a consultant of mine, but was a paid independent contractor prior to me even becoming a county commissioner. That's been well over 4 years. This person is not paid by me and has not been paid by me in any way, shape, or form since. So after 4 years, if somebody wants to come and apply to be on a committee for the Lane County Board of Commissioners, they have that opportunity to do so. That is legal by law, and it's legal by the rules and the application provided by this body. We did the same thing when we put together the committee for redistricting. We each had our opportunity to provide one person to that committee, and that committee, those people were able to choose the remaining members of the redistricting committee. We are following the same process for the review charter that we did at that time. And this avoids the look that any one of us Board of Commissioners is picking and choosing the people that will be made up of this committee. That keeps an arm's length from that choice and provides a modicum of transparency that we think is very important to the public at large. This committee is in charge of looking at our charter, which we do every 10 years. This is a different charge for this committee than it was for redistricting, but it always comes after that redistricting process. This review is really important to us as a county and to the public that we serve. I will support the choice of the people that we have recommended to this committee, and it ensures transparency to the public. Thank you, Chair.
And thank you, Commissioner Buck, for the discussion. Then I'll just add a little bit. You know, as far as process is concerned, we often charge committees with work to give us advice on how to move forward with action. Ultimately, it is the Board of County Commissioners that takes the action. And often committees will give us a choice of actions to take. Sometimes they won't. Sometimes they'll give their straight out recommendations, and we do or do not follow those recommendations. The list is long of committees whose recommendation we have not followed per se, including the Planning Commission, whose recommendations we often ignore and come up with our own plan. So with this, my preference would have been to have seen a list of 3 or 4 or 5 people for us to choose from, which was recommended by the committee as charged by the Board of County Commissioners. That would have been my preference at this point in time. As it is, we're presented with a Hobson's choice of candidates, which is in no small part a part of the charge that we gave to the appointed members of the Charter Review Committee. And I do trust my appointee, as each one of us trusts our own appointees to that particular committee. But my feeling on this is that I would have preferred to have seen a shorter list, a list of people for us to choose from, as opposed to a Hobson's choice of 2 candidates whose names we are rubber stamping basically to put on the committee. It is ultimately the Board of County Commissioners' choice, no matter what charge we gave to our committee, and no matter what charge we gave to the Planning Commission or whomever else. It is ultimately our decision to make the final choice. So with that, further discussion, Commissioner Bozievich.
Thank you, Chair. So I just, 2 things about process. One, we all knew exactly who we were appointing to these committees. The blind applications are a false pretense. And therefore, the 5 original members of both committees were direct appointees of the commissioners, and people knew who they were appointing up front. And then the fact that, you know, there's a majority on this board, their committee appointees were able to overrule the other ones to appoint additional members. So to say that we had no involvement in the process of getting to these 2 members is sort of specious, because everybody knew who they were appointing and they knew how those appointees would act in appointing additional people. Now, relative to the person that I'm really concerned about, yes, maybe they haven't been paid by those commissioners since over 4 years ago, but that person was the general political consultant to their election campaigns that originally got them elected, and received over $100,000 in compensation from their campaigns, which they controlled the purse strings to.
Let's avoid personal interactions and personal.
I'm just, you know, to make it sound like this person had no involvement really. I take objection to that. But I'm just saying, we all know who we appoint to these committees, and to think that the follow-up of a group of like-minded committee appointees wasn't going to continue that down the road, and that there's no conversations that happen back room and all that about who they're going to appoint, I think is just, you know, that's the part I think that maybe you know, the chair is getting at, that it doesn't seem completely transparent. And my concern with this particular individual in his service on the Independent Review Committee was involved in the drafting of 2 of the most gerrymandered maps that were presented to us. So that's, you know, his past work on committees shows he couldn't kind of leave his political consulting behind him to be, you know, to present something that was actually good solutions.
Commissioner Bozievich, thank you so much. I think you've illustrated your point very clearly. Thank you. Further discussion, Commissioner Buck.
I would like to park the conspiracy theories at the door and call the question.
We have a motion to call the question, which does not require a second. I'll call on the vote to call the question. All those in favor of voting immediately, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. We will call the question, and the question is Order 22-11-2902 in the matter of appointing 2 at-large citizen members for specified terms to the Charter Review Committee. No further discussion. I will call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay.
Nay.
Passes 3-2 with Farr and Bozievich in opposition. Congratulations to the new members of the Charter Review Committee. Vice Chair Trieger.
Thank you, Chair. Just one more note for the public who may not be familiar with this process. Charter Review Committee will recommend potential changes to the charter to the Board of County Commissioners, who will then decide whether to put those changes to the voters. So ultimately, this is a decision that the voters of Lane County, if there are to be any changes to our charter made, are who will ultimately make that decision. Just wanted to ensure for, again, folks watching who don't have all the background on the different functions of these committees, to put that out there. Thank you.
And thank you, Vice Chair Trieger, for illustrating a point that I did make, and that is that committees do make recommendations to the Board of County Commissioners, who have the ultimate responsibility to make the decision. And that will be the same with the Charter Review Committee. Once it makes recommendations, it will be the ultimate responsibility of the Board of County Commissioners, who is seated when that recommendation is made, to pass or fail those recommendations. Thank you, Vice Chair Trieger, for re-illustrating my point. Then we'll move down the agenda. Thank you very much to those of you who are here for the charter review item. Thanks for your participation. And Mr. Mokrajewski, do you have any announcements?
I'll have a final update on the election, final recap of the election next week. But just to note that the election, the 2022 general election was certified yesterday. And hand counting is happening this week. And then we'll again do a final update next week for you.
Thank you, Ms. Mokrajewski. Some of the other things in the big show that we had today, there's a long time getting to the point where you're able to say that. So not quite there, but very good. Thank you very much. Any further announcements?
That's it.
Then we'll move along to Commissioner Business. A couple of items. Any announcements from commissioners? Then I will say this announcement, in case you're not aware of it. Today is actually Commissioner Bozovich's last meeting. As of tomorrow, I believe Commissioner Bozovich will no longer be a resident of the state of Oregon. Is that correct, Commissioner?
As of Friday.
As of this, later on this week. So with that, our next meeting, which is next Tuesday, Commissioner Bozovich will be aboard of 4 commissioners at that point in time. No further announcements, I see. Any future board assignment requests beyond the ones we've already delivered to Mr. Mokrajewski? I am seeing none. Then item 10C is a recognition of service for Commissioners Jay Bozovich and Commissioner Joe Berney. And Mr. Mokrajewski, I'll turn it over to you to begin. If there's anything you'd like to give us a preamble.
Sure, Chair. I can, and I think you have a couple of certificates. Do you?
I do. Yeah, beyond that.
Present? I'm happy to start the discussion, and we wanted to have an opportunity today, and I know there's some folks here joining us in the room that want to recognize both Commissioner Bozovich and Commissioner Berney for their years of public service. I will say I personally sometimes question why good people run for elected office these days, given the challenges and the scrutiny. And so just a recognition of both that challenge of putting yourself out there on the ballot and campaigning for office and then serving in elected office and here at Lane County as a county commissioner is a bold thing and a really important thing to do, that we need good people that are running for office and serving in public service in different ways. And so that's a way to just introduce and broadly say thank you to Commissioner Bozovich and Commissioner Berney for your years of service. I will say to Commissioner Bozovich, who was on the board when I started in 2014, ever the engineer Jay Bozovich is. And of course, let me just say that we talk a lot about our behavior coins, the 3 coins that we provide to county employees. We recognize the behaviors that our employees exhibit that we most value: a passion to serve, a drive to connect, and a focus on solutions. So when I think about Commissioner Bozovich, ever the engineer, Commissioner, I'm reminded of your work to really focus on solutions, to look at things like our roads. And of course, we had the vehicle registration fee back in 2015, and Commissioner Bozovich was the chair, I believe, at that time, and served as chair twice during his years of service in 2015 and 2018. Of course, we were not successful with the vehicle registration fee in 2015, but it did lead to significant efforts at the state level, and our legislative delegation in Salem from Lane County, along with the legislature and governor, approved additional funding for our roads. After that, Commissioner Bozovich was a big part of that work, has been an advocate for public safety funding, for all the work that we've done over the past several years in budget balancing. I mentioned that Commissioner Bozovich was chair twice during that time, and I want to, on behalf of the organization, thank Jay for his years of service as county commissioner and that work to focus on solutions. For Commissioner Berney, who for the past 4 years has served as commissioner and served as chair once, I think about Commissioner Berney as ever the connector, someone who truly is driven to connect and leads with relationships. And you've heard that I don't know if you all have heard that saying, the 7 degrees of separation from Kevin Bacon. I feel like it's the 7 degrees of separation from Joe Burney, who has relationships everywhere and has leveraged those relationships to do really great work in your time over the past 4 years, from community benefits agreements. When Joe was first elected, came and said, you know, what can we do to advance local contracting and family supported wages and full healthcare benefits for workers in our community. I worked to help navigate some of that, but it really was Commissioner Burney's vision and prioritization for doing that work, and understanding of really wanting to know how you move things through in an organization, a community like this. Climate action, we just had this wonderful presentation today on the materials recycling recovery facility. These are huge catalytic projects that have been advanced in a short amount of time. And Commissioner Burney, you served as chair in 2021, which was arguably one of the most challenging years that we've had in a long time. Getting vaccinations out, hundreds of thousands of vaccinations that we moved out into the community, the challenges with several state agencies that we had to work through, and advocacy to make sure that we were getting the flow of vaccine and policy flexibility that we needed to move that through. Just your support and advocacy during that time. So I want to thank again both of these commissioners for their great work. They've been individuals that we as a staff have been able to rely on when we have challenges, that we're able to bring forward and move towards solutions. So those are the comments, Chair, that I offer you, and certainly welcome you and other commissioners or others that are here to add to that.
Thank you, Mr. Mokrycki. Then I'll call on commissioners individually, and I'll begin with Commissioner Book, followed by Vice Chair Trieger.
Thank you, Chair. Didn't realize that was how we were going to go, but you know, this is the first time that I've sat in this chair with an adjustment of 2 different commissioners coming on. It's going to be quite the transition, but I do want to at least first acknowledge that Commissioner Burney and myself came on the board at the same time. And it was an experience that I don't know what I would have done on my own. It was quite a bonding experience, actually, for the 2 of us, not only to get to know one another, because we didn't know each other prior to actually starting work, really, and getting to know the work here at the county and what was all in front of us at the time. And I couldn't think of anybody, excuse me, better to have done that with than you. And I appreciate all the hours that we spent together trying to get up to speed, understanding all the material. Most people aren't familiar, but a large amount of our work is reading a lot of material every single time that something's presented to us at a Board of Commissioners meeting, and then moving together on items that were of similar value and were meaningful to the county together. I thank you very, very much for being a partner and a fellow commissioner and your support over the years. And I thoroughly look forward to our enduring friendship after this.
Me too. Thank you. That's all.
Very good. Vice Chair Trieger.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for kicking us off, Mr. Mokrycki, on this. And so we have one more meeting still with Commissioner Burney. So I'm glad for that. And like Commissioner Buck, I know we'll stay in touch and stay connected beyond your service as you're staying local. And I just want to appreciate, since that's what we're taking a moment to do, regardless of particular policy decisions or votes, I know every decision you made and every comment you make at this dais and in meetings elsewhere comes from a place of genuine care and concern for the community broadly, and particularly for our own workforce here at Lane County and for other workers across Lane County. And I that is something I think we really connect on, and I really very much appreciate your integrity in serving the community in that way. Commissioner Bozovich, I first met when I served on the Budget Committee in 2014, and I've learned a lot about process and how to use the function of meetings to get important work done. We have had many disagreements, but we've also had a lot of alignment in just issue areas. I've learned a lot about our public safety system and really appreciate his work, particularly in that issue area. And Mr. Mokrzycki mentioned the focus on solutions piece about how we do things here. And at that, for my first year on Budget Committee, I thought I was overwhelmed serving on the Budget Committee. Now on the Commission, it's even more information that comes at you with decisions to make and weigh in on. But I just remember it was when the public safety levy was, it was the first year after it had passed, and we had some more money available than had been spent in that first year because of staffing up took longer and so on. And right before that, we had a presentation from the youth services, from juvenile services, about how constrained they were. And I just sort of thinking out loud, I was sitting next to Commissioner Bozovich, was like, can we use the levy money for youth services? And he jumped right in and used the process to actually make that happen and get a little more resource into youth services as part of that. So very much appreciate that, have learned a lot, and wish you all the best in your next chapter.
Thank you, Vice Chair Trieger. I'll say a few words personally, and Commissioner Burney, I'll begin with you. I remember the first time you and I met. We're standing outside a bus over by Shelter Care, and you wondered if I was one of your constituents, as I recall. And we met, shook hands for the first time that day. Since then, you and I have gotten to know each other a lot. We've spent a lot of time away and at this table talking about things that we believe in, things that we agree on, things that we are mutually passionate about. And I got to tell you that when I became a county commissioner 10 years ago, I'd already served for a lot of years as a Eugene City Councilor. I'd already served in the Oregon State Legislature and as a school board member. And, you know, at that point, you think maybe that you've learned a lot and there's not a lot left to learn. But on a daily basis, I learned from you, Commissioner Burney. On an ongoing basis, I learned about community benefits, about how important that is. I learned about labor relations in a much clearer way than I ever had been able to envision before. And I also learned about the heart that people can bring to this work and the experience that you bring to this work that really has made a huge difference in the last 4 years, Joe. This has been a wonderful 4 years. I served as your vice chair during that very difficult year that Mr. Mokrzycki mentioned, where we weren't here. We weren't here in Harris Hall. We had to do it all from a distance. I didn't see you more than 2 or 3 times during that year, but together we made some incredible strides in getting us through first a pandemic, and then a wildfire that devastated a large part of the county in the recovery from. And Joe, I hope I don't miss you. I hope I don't miss you. And I got to mention a very special guest in the audience today. Maddie is with us today. So thank you for being here it's not Joe's last meeting, but you've been with him every step of the way. That is huge. Thank you. And Commissioner Bozovich, I'm looking around the room right now. Few people know what Lane County looked like when you first became a county commissioner. Not very many people remember the disarray that we had. For the last 8 years of my county commission, particularly since Mr. Mokrzycki came on board, we've enjoyed a structurally balanced budget. We've enjoyed, I'll not say enjoy because it's not been easy to maintain a structurally balanced budget, but when you came on board 12 years ago, Commissioner Bozovich, this place was a shambles. And the work that was done in that first 2 years of your commission, you carried the heavy load of restructuring Lane County, of finding ways to painfully, at times, often very, very painfully, cut services that people have become accustomed to. Not just cut them, but to reinvent them in ways that few people can imagine could possibly have been done. I mentioned to Commissioner Burney that I learned from him, Commissioner Bozovich, from my first day on the job. In fact, from your first day on the job, I was learning from you. When you became a county commissioner, I was still a Eugene City Councilor for 2 more years. So I got to work side by side, trying to form a bond between city government and county government that really, we still are working on that bond. Commissioner Bozovich, you were a huge part of bringing the cities and the county together to work together on things like transportation issues and especially with double exclamation points, public safety issues. your years on the Safety Coordinating Council, with some folks sitting in the room here, have enjoyed your work on the PSCC. It's taken us a great deal, a great distance down the road in order for us to work with a sheriff's department that is dreadfully understaffed, work with rural patrol that is virtually non-existent in most cases, and find ways to really deliver public safety in ways that were unimaginable, could be unimaginable to people who looked at the budget that you had to work with 12 years ago. Thank you, Commissioner Bozovich. I will miss you, and from a distance, but once again, I hope I don't actually miss you. I've grown accustomed to your face, right? And so it is a song. So with that, any further comments? I want to thank both Commissioners Bozovich and Bernie for their combined 16 years of service.
And you have certificates, Chair, and then we also we have plaques that have been made up for both Commissioner Bernie and Commissioner Bozovich that we weren't able to get from the local small business this morning, but we think we'll have them later today. So we'll present those to you. They include a one of our Lane County Challenge coins that is really reflective. It says Lane County Proud, and it's reflective of the pride that we have in serving this organization and this community, and certainly representative of the great work that Commissioners Bozovich and Bernie have done over their years of service.
Thank you, Ms. Morkrax, and Ms. Williams. I'm looking at you. You and I talked about the plaque with the coins, and it's news to me that we may have them by the end of this day. We'll be out of board meetings by that point in time, but they're beyond the certificates that we've all signed. There will be a plaque. So for Commissioner Bernie, I have for you a certificate. It's a award of recognition presented to, look, it says Joe Bernie there, but it says Jay Bozovich there. Split this around.
Actually, Jay, aren't I sitting in the seat that you usually sat at?
Actually, Commissioner Sorensen sat at that seat for all the years I was here. So, I mean, all the years here, and now we're here together. So presented to Joe Bernie in appreciation for your service to Lane County government. We've said words. We have one more meeting together. Commissioner Bernie, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And Commissioner, Commissioner Bernie, your turn to say something. You just received your award.
I had some prepared remarks, which I will absolutely disregard. I do want to say this. The most touching thing right now for me is the people that are in this room. I didn't know what this was going to look like. I was told to invite some people, and I invited people that were about as close to my heart as any group could be. So I just want to say this. All my life, I've tried to live by the golden rule. That's it. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. My life is one of trying to live those words, always wearing a smile, no matter how intense or stressful things were. Always hoping for the best, but preparing for the worst, because you never know. And trying to leave the world just a little bit better than I found it. That's not profound, but that's pretty much been my MO. When I ran for office 5 years ago, I actually had no illusion of winning. Maddie and I were going to retire. We had our plans. But I won. And the reason I ran was because before I died, I just wanted to try and use a campaign, not for the dirty, cutthroat, win at all costs that seems to be the mentality often of the political environment we now find ourselves in. But I ran as a test. I used to be an educator, and I wanted to use a campaign to educate people and talk about what I felt were critical issues nationally and how they played out locally, whether that be war, poverty, racism, environmental degradation. The list goes on. And the other part of that, given where I came from, was how do you increase local wages? Quantitatively, how do you pragmatically, not rhetorically, create equal opportunity and the need for climate action, etc. Well, here's where I deviate from my remarks, but because of who's in the room. I want to, Bruce Weber, who was my appointment to the budget committee. You know, my eyes are terrible. I think you're out there, Bruce. Yeah, see, okay. Bruce and Michelle have been friends of Maddie's and mine for many years. It was an honor to appoint Bruce, an ex-Banner Bank executive, to the budget committee. And I hope you would all agree, and you, Steve, would agree, that Bruce has really been a dedicated student of the budget, understander of county operations, and he has helped me really educate people in our community about what this county does and what we don't do. And Bruce, thank you so much for being here. You're an amazing friend. You know, I saw that the memo was written to department heads from you, Steve, and I felt that who was missing were our friends in labor. And I see Jim and Pat representing AFSCME. And I have always felt that labor and management have the same goal. You know, we talk about a healthy county and a healthy community and things as mundane as health insurance for everybody and retirement for people. And I felt that it just behooved me to invite our AFSCME partners representing other unions, but you're the largest union. But again, you mentioned 7 degrees of separation. There's everyone on this dais and everyone in this room that are going to be friends for life. And Jim and Pat, thank you very much. Now, Steve misspoke. I didn't come in there and say, how do we do this and that for the county? This guy and his staff pulled me into a meeting before I became county commissioner and said, and Mr. Bozovich over there said, we need you to support ballot initiative for a new courthouse. We need a new public safety center. And so when the staff, I'm not kidding you, I wanted to demonstrate to Jay that we could work together. I had no idea that he and I would be co-convening an initiative to try and make that happen. But Steve, if you recall, you said, how can we get your support for this? We want this to be a 5-0 unanimous county commissioner thing. And I said, and I never told you this, but I just put on my negotiating hat invisibly. And I said, well, do you remember this now? Well, we could bind a courthouse project as long as everyone made prevailing wages that worked on the project. And then we talked about employer full family health coverage, and we talked about retirement, and then we talked about sealing the envelope correctly and renewable energy and women and minority owned businesses being a part of it. We talked about all those things before I had one day as a county commissioner. And I said, if you guys could do that, I'm in. So from that, I just want to say I met these guys before, but I brought in some real working class champions. And Jeff McGillivray, where are you? Jeff's there. Who else is there with you? Kale's not here. Okay, and Russ. Jeff McGillivray is the head of the Lane, Coos, Curry, Douglas Building Trades. He's on the board of the Oregon Statewide Building and Construction Trades. He's on the Lane Workforce Partnership board, and many things that I can't mention. He's a plumber. And Jeff has for decades, as has Kale, as has Russ, as has thousands of other women and men that you represent, been working consistent with the values that this body embraced as a community benefits agreement, have given their lives to it. So for you three, Jeff, Kale is the statewide organizer for IBEW. Kale got a job advancement as a result of his working on the community benefits agreement. And Russ is a political director with sheet metal for how many states, Russ? 7 states. Thank you very much for being here. These are the individuals, predominantly Kale and Jeff. Sorry, Russ, but these are the individuals that worked for 2 years on the nuts and the bolts and the details of what became the Lane County Community Benefits Agreement. Them, not me. Them and Sean Waite. Sean Waite has been absolutely incredible and received support. And so for you to be here means so much to me. Now, you spent 2 years in Lane County. We worked it all out. Greg Rickoff, by the way. Greg, are you here now? Well, Greg said that this has liberated many of the people that work in Lane County because it has allowed them to do the work that they really believe in, from procurement to legal to project management. And Sean Waite on the staff has literally pieced together exactly what the vision has been in a way I never could have predicted. So, Sean, thank you so much. But now I'm going to tell you a little story about, and by the way, I have to say, Senator Beyer and I, Senator, I've invited you here because you're a friend, not because you're one of the most august and senior and most productive and impactful senators in the Oregon Senate. You're here because we're friends, and Lee, I can't thank you enough. People don't know it, but Lee literally helped another guy, Charles Dalton, and I during the Enron energy overcharging. Lee guided us through then Attorney General Hardy Myers changing what was originally going to be a small refund to every ratepayer in the state of Oregon from Oregon's settlement from that to instead devoting tens of millions of dollars specifically to low-income ratepayer programs. And that was all because of Lee Beyer, and Lee has helped me for 30 years. So thank you for being here, sir. But talking about the community benefits, I have to talk about, if I may, my brother, Senator James Manning, who, James, I don't know who holds you in higher regard, Pat or I, but I know one day we're going to arm wrestle over it, back when I'm whole again. Maddie and I have cherished the evenings we spent with you in Lawanda. We forged a bond. If I educated James a little about the details of a community benefits agreement and a PLA, James was surprised that the state didn't already require it. And he said, Joe, I'll sponsor it. You submit it. I'll get your name on the legislation. And he did. But while he was doing that, just before it came to a vote as to whether this would be state law or not, Senate Bill 420, I mean, Eugene, anyway, Senate Bill 420, James experienced the tragedy of his life, which I could not comprehend because I can't comprehend losing Patty. And he said, Joe, I need some time, but I'm going to postpone a vote until I can get back to the Senate. He did. And he came back with the recent loss of his soulmate. And he moved that legislation from legislation based on what Lane County did to reality for every city, every county, every municipality, every school district in the state. And that's our Senator James Manning. Thank you for being here, sir. I just want to also say, if I may, that Maddie is my wife, and I owe her an apology. But she gave her last 4 years for me to join you. And honey, I'm coming home. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Commissioner Bernie.
I apologize for the tears. I'm sorry.
Commissioner Bozevich, I have two of your three awards here with me. The first one, I'll do this one first. This one is the Lane County Employees Upon Departure, after serving 10 years, receive a very cool little unit. And if I'm going to set it right here, and I don't know if we can get a closer buzz in on that from, what's my best angle, Neil? In front of my face, how's that? So what we have here is it's a hologram. Is that the right term? Of a covered bridge. It's a Lane County covered bridge, and this, I believe, is the Good Pasture covered bridge, isn't it? But Jay, you've seen these. This one has your name inscribed upon it in recognition of 12 years of service. I have this in my hand. We'll present this to you. It'll be here waiting for you when you come in. The second is the award of recognition presented to Jay Bozevich in appreciation for your service to Lane County government, signed by all of us. Commissioner Bozevich, you have the floor.
Thank you, Pat. And I just want to spend a few minutes thanking everybody. You know, I am the ultimate INTJ engineer person. Things like this embarrass me. You might not notice anyone that was invited out in the audience because that's not my thing to be recognized like this. I want to just spend a few minutes thanking first just the voters of the West Lane District for putting their trust in me for the last 12 years. You know, that means a lot to me. I just want to say also just thank you to the staff of Lane County. Over the years, I've said a lot of things in public that sounded really smart. Half the time it was because I had great staff feeding me information and good ideas. And I just got to say them at board meetings. You know, we did struggle. And the other thing I want to thank the staff for is being willing to sacrifice, particularly some of the non-rep staff that seems to have always been the first to have to step up and make a sacrifice when it came, especially in those first years where we were making first a 20% real dollar cut in our all funds budget and then a couple 8% cuts following that. There was a lot of sacrifice and the taxpayers should be thanking all of you for that sacrifice that you made in those days. You know, I've always had a focus of trying to think of the citizens and the taxpayers first. A lot of those same citizens have also made me sound smart in board meetings because I get information or leads on things that are happening in Lane County and issues that need to be addressed directly from the constituents and the citizens of Lane County. So, you know, the staff, the citizens, Steve Moker-Heisky, our relationship's been a great one. Some of the executive staff there, the department heads, the elected department heads that I've worked with over the years. You know, looking at some of the relationships I've had with mayors and city councilors of the multiple cities in my district and across the county, the relationships I've had with legislators, Lee and James, you know I've been in your office before talking to you about everything from you know, with James in particular, it was more public safety issues because you were sitting on that committee. With Lee, it was about transportation issues. So you guys are well aware of that. But I just want to thank everybody that's helped me be successful as a commissioner. And a lot of what people say nice things about me is really because of all of you. And finally, I'll just say thank you also to my wife, Elizabeth. You know, you saw in Joe that emotion. It is a true sacrifice of a spouse of an elected official at this level. The amount of time you have to dedicate. Heather mentioned how much we read. My Sunday evenings just about are always spent with at least 3 to 4 hours of reading board material. You know, that's usually not what most, you know, spouses do on Sunday evenings, you know, together. So I just have to say thank you to Elizabeth, that, you know, 13 years, because there's a year of running for commissioner in there, that is even more taxing, almost than being a commissioner. Those 13 years you've sacrificed, I truly appreciate it. And just thank you to Elizabeth. Thank you, everyone. And I'll always remember my time as a commissioner fondly. I hope people will remember that we got some good things done while I was here.
Joe, you're not the only one with tears in your eyes. I think I see around the room, you're not the only one. So thank you very much, Commissioners Bozievich and Bernie. The influence that you've had on my personal service has been great and will continue even after your departure as county commissioners, but in ongoing with your service to the people of the communities that you live in. Thank you. Well, with that, Mr. Mokrahajski, thank you everyone for being here for this particular ceremony. There will be a reception following this upstairs in the Board of County Commissioners conference room. Might spill out in the hallway a little bit. There's a DUI impact panel, Mr. Mokrahajski, that happened down the hallway that I'll be splitting time between the two. So with that, Mr. Mokrahajski, can I have a review of assignments?
I think we should all go up and enjoy some refreshments and snacks and celebrate our 2 outgoing commissioners.
We have no need for executive session today. I have gavel in hand right now. Commissioner Bernie.
How do we get to where we're going?
Well, there are 2 routes. You can take these back stairs up here, or you can take the stairs up there, but right to the 2nd floor, just 1 floor above us, the commissioners' conference room.
And you know, Jay's comments really, my great error. Steve, Diana out in cyberspace, Dan Hurley, Steve Adams, Sean, Greg Rickoff, the list goes on. But you guys have been, thank you, because you know what you've let me do? You've let me do more than the typical role. Not that any of us do the typical role of just policy, but you've really allowed me to dig in and make productive change and work in partnership, and you didn't have to. I'm very familiar with the 15-minute rule, but you did, and I can't thank you enough. It made for a quality of 4 years that otherwise just wouldn't have been. So thank you, Jim.
The 15 minutes only ticks when you're talking. And so you're masterful at talking for 30 seconds and making 15 minutes last for 4 years. Good job. So with that, Commissioner Bozievich, this gavel will sound the end of your last meeting as on the Board of County Commissioners, and Commissioner Bernie will be with you next week again. So it points out a flaw in the 2 buildings that we're occupying right now. There is no elevator access from this floor to the public service building without using stairs. So the stairs through that door or through this door. I'd love to see you all up there. With that, our business of the day is concluded. We are adjourned.